Hey truckers, today we're seeing part 9 of Supremacy games. Let's dive into the video. If it was another spider species, they wouldn't mind having their web ruined. Hell, they wouldn't care even if it got destroyed, as they could easily recreate another one without wasting a single ounce of energy in the process. However, just like humans, beasts also had a reverse scale that mustn't be touched or insulted no matter what. Explore new ovals on nvelby.com. For the mother spider, it was definitely her web. And the incensed screeches she kept releasing while facing Felix were the best proof of so. Without warning, she jumped from her web and landed on the wall 10 meters above Felix's head. Just because her web was ruined beyond recognition, making her discard it like some sort of trash, it didn't mean that it would jump next to Felix and fight it out with him in melee form. TSK. You should have just saved me the effort. Somewhat annoyed, Felix clicked his tongue while creating inside his oversized pocket an azure blue bomb. He wasn't joking around when he said that his plan was foolproof, as he even prepared a way to negate the mother spider's reliability on sticking on walls. Felix wasn't stupid to not see it happening after he destroyed her web. But he still preferred if she just dropped near him without wasting his time and energy to force it into happening. Careful! Worried, Felix's fan club all yelled out loud at the sight of the mother spider, pointing her rear in Felix's direction, clearly preparing to launch an attack. However, their worry extinguished just as it lit up, after seeing Felix dodge sideways a pitch-black ball that was hurled from the spider abdomen rear. Yet, before they could sigh in relief, another ball was sent, then another, and another. It just kept going and going non-stop, like a machine gun firing away freely. Nonetheless, Felix dodged all of them easily, not getting affected in the slightest by her offense. The spectators got a bit skeptical at this weird sight. After all, the beast was supposed to be a legendary rank, thus it was simply impossible for her attacks to be this trashy. Hell, her attack was even worse than some rare ranked beasts they saw during this game. It just didn't make sense. Suddenly, the majority of the spectators recoiled back in their seats with shocked expressions after seeing the pitch-black balls all around Felix began to quiver silently, not making a single sound in the process. Then unexpectedly, cracks slowly started to appear and spread on the surface of the balls, making them resemble birds' eggs on the verge of hatching. Too bad for Felix, that was exactly what happened. As the ball that was sent first broke apart, revealing a mini version of the mother spider. Everything was exactly the same, from her CLU.S.tiered red eyes to her bent fierce-looking fangs. The only difference was the size, as the mini version only had the size of a human ADU.L.T's head. If this small spiderling was the only one that hatched, the sight might actually appear cute. Alas, the rest of the eggs followed quickly after and began to hatch one by one, leaving the area around Felix surrounded with a sea of spiderlings, which were snapping their fangs continuously in a frenzy. If Landlord didn't escape their encirclement, he would certainly die. Zoe yelled with a hint of excitement and eagerness, wanting nothing more but to see him suffer. She was clearly confident in her prediction. The spectators might not understand why so, since she didn't explain herself, but Felix would totally see what she meant if he heard her, as he also understood that being inside those spiderlings' encirclement wasn't a good thing. Simply because they were not the mother spider children, brainless and plain stupid, but her own self copied with the same abilities and elements. This meant each spiderling could kill with a single venomous bite, just like it was done by the mother itself. Find authorized novels in faster updates, better experience. Please click #48757589831382782 for visiting. With this kind of ability, she didn't need to approach Felix at all, but just keep her distance and send copies of herself to do the deed, as long as the number of copies did not exceed 100. Since she could control them by linking each eye with one spiderling. Thus, the army wouldn't be disoriented and in a total mess, but attacking as one and retreating as one. Shreesh! Immediately after dropping 100 eggs near Felix, the mother spider's CLU.S. teared eyes all glowed with bright red light, sending dangerous vibes throughout the air. Simultaneously, the inactive spiderlings all began to make a move. 40% spread apart and surrounded Felix in an even wider circle, standing 10 meters away from him. 30% pointed their rear in his direction and started spewing silky white webs, trying to capture him. Finally, the last 30% jumped with their fangs tips glittering with dark green color, clearly planning to poison him. All of those orders were carried instantly and simultaneously without a single delay, and Felix, who was in the very middle of those attacks, just smirked and snapped his fingers casually like he wasn't in a life or death situation. Paralyze Aura. Instantly, a light yellow mist emerged from his body's pores and engulfed all of the spiderlings, which were in its range. The ones who were jumping on him stiffened while midair. Meanwhile, the rest, who had their rear facing him, froze in their position as well, forcing them to pause spewing their webs. If their webs were an active ability base that relied on their energy, then Felix's Paralyze Aura wouldn't have affected their web creation in the slightest, since abilities only need thoughts to be activated and elemental energy. However, the spider's webs relied on their spinneret glands located at the tip of their abdomen, which is part of their body, and paralyze inducement affected the entire body. Nonetheless, Felix didn't escape unscathed from their offense, as he wasn't able to dodge the already spewed shower of webs. Landlord handled one attack but still got caught by the other. Zoe zoomed the camera on Felix, who was currently inside a tightly sealed cocoon, and shouted, "How would he escape this entry.a.p.im?" Before Zoe could even finish her sentence, a cloud of acid mist emerging from inside the cocoon interrupted her. She and the spectators understood immediately that Felix was planning to corrode the cocoon just he did with the mother spider web. He didn't even turn off his Paralyze Aura, as he relied on simply one acid bomb to free himself swiftly. Immediately after breaking out, Felix started to viciously stomp his legs on the spiderlings, blocking his way to the mother spider. Crunch! Crack! Bones were broken and skulls destroyed into a paste. Anything that met Felix's leg had a miserable ending. However, every dead spiderling he left behind him turned into a cloud of mist a few seconds later and drifted towards the mother spider, who absorbed it gladly. A moment later, she began to hurl those black balls again in his direction, forcing him to stop advancing and focus on dodging. He truly should have left them alone, and just focused on dealing with the mother spider first. After all, no matter how many he killed, new ones would replace them swiftly, pushing the number to reach 100 again. If the spiderlings just disappeared immediately after dying, the mother spider wouldn't have been infamous for being one of the worst low-tiered poisonous beasts to hunt down effectively without losing too many hunters in the process. Sadly, that wasn't it. The number of the spiderlings never went beyond 100, and also beneath it. Felix knew so as well, thus he completely ignored the immobilized spiderlings near him and drew closer to his real target, trying to use the bomb that was hidden in his pocket as fast as possible. Shriek! However, the mother spider wasn't planning on letting him break outside of the encirclement that easily, as it gave orders to the remaining 40% of spiderlings, which were staying outside of his aura domain, to collect the venom on their mouths and spit it in his direction. This wasn't even an ability but just countermeasurement to Felix's aura that blocked her minions from reaching his side to bite him. Despite her out-of-the-box method of attack, Felix wasn't bothered by the incoming shower of spit. He simply put his arms in front of his face in disgust and dashed right through the salvo of spit, unworried about getting affected by the venom. The hell is he doing? Zoe's eyes widened a bit, as she exclaimed, no matter how high his poison resistance, it wouldn't be able to fully nullify the effects. Too bad, her prediction this time was completely off the mark, as Felix broke outside of the encirclement while under the salvo of venom without a pause or letting a single yelp. Speechless, the spectators watched him wipe the dark green spit on his sleeves while mumbling under his breath, "Were you trying to disgust me to the death or what?" they honestly had no idea if the mother spider venom was overrated or Felix was simply a monster to have such a high poison resistance that was completely able to negate a legendary beast poison. Are my eyes playing a trick on me? Zoe rubbed her eyes awestruck at the sight, not daring to believe it, neither wanting to. Unlike those spectators who had simple knowledge about the mother spider, she had a full understanding of it, just like Felix. It was her job, after all, to have as much information as possible about the universe to be able to commentate professionally and not stutter like a total amateur. Thus, she was well aware that what Felix just did was beyond amazing and on the border of absurdity. The mother spider poison was able to kill from just a single whiff, don't even mention getting touched by it directly. Even if she added Felix's high poison resistance to the mix, it simply meant that he was able to survive getting killed by it, but not escape the excruciating pain it caused to one's nerves. She couldn't help but zoom on his face, hoping to see if his expression twisted if just by a bit to ease her tremulous emotions. Unfortunately, the darkness under Felix's haughty blocked her attempt, leaving gritting her teeth in anger. Bastard! You must have immunity to poison. It can only be so. Annoyed, she bit her lower lip and enlarged the camera again, displaying both Felix and the mother spider staring at each other in silence. It was clear that the mother spider was at her wits' end on dealing with Felix, which was quite understandable honestly. After all, her greatest strength was based on her spiderling army, but Felix's abilities countered everything she used on him effortlessly, from her silk element that could be corroded easily by his acid inducement, to her infamous poison that was totally ignored by him like some sort of byproduct. If she was dealing with anyone else besides Felix, she could have easily massacred them by just sending a few members of her army. Yet, for this bastard, she literally threw everything but to no avail. Thus, she decided to switch from offense to defense, waiting patiently on Felix's counterattack. Who knows, he might expose an opening in the process. Low-tiered legendary beasts were not mindless monsters, but actually had the intelligence of 7-year-old human, able to have a somewhat clear thought process. But the majority still relied on their instinct and senses for battles, totally ignoring using their brains. Mother Spider wasn't like the rest. She knew when to push and when to retreat. Felix wasn't throwing his azure bomb, even though she was clearly targetable, was because of so. He felt that if he rushed his offense and exposed his azure bomb to her, he wouldn't be able to get another chance if she dodged it successfully. Hence, the current staring contest between a beast and a human, a strange scene that rarely appeared in any game. Nervous and thrilled, the spectators all went quiet as well. After a short while, the tense atmosphere was suddenly broken by Felix throwing an acid bomb, leaving the azure bomb hidden in his pocket. He couldn't handle continuing this staring contest, as his energy kept being consumed each second due to his aura. After all, if he turned it off for even a split second, the spiderlings behind him wouldn't hesitate to jump on him. Poof! The acid bomb exploded exactly on the mother spider's head. It turned out she didn't even bother on dodging his attack, clearly confident in her poison resistance to handle Felix's inducements. Her confidence was well justified, as the acid inducement that terrorized everyone in the game didn't even leave a single scratch on her body. Still unconvinced, Felix switched to sleepiness inducement and threw the bomb again. Just like before, the mother spider remained in her position glued on the wall, totally uncaring about the incoming white bomb. Poof! 0F***CKs given by the mother spider, as she breathed in the inducement out loud, making the spectators laugh their ass off at such blatant taunt. If it was just so, Zoe and the spectators wouldn't be that amused, but the mother spider kept tapping her 20 legs on the wall, clearly showing that she was not affected in the slightest by his poison. PFFFFF. Felix, you are getting mocked by a spider, said Asna, laughing out loud. Annoyed by the whole farce, Felix just kept standing on his position with his eyebrows twitching at the sight of the mother spider tapping her legs and pointing one at him, clearly provoking him to send another inducement. Heh, let's see how you gonna laugh after you absorb this. A smirk couldn't help but grace Felix's face, as brought out the azure bomb that was in his pocket. It was finally time to introduce the game-changing inducement that he prepared just for the mother spider. Neurotoxin inducement, he smiled smugly and threw the bomb, not bothering anymore if she would dodge or not. She truly saved him the effort by getting C.0.C.KY in her poison resistance. Poof! Immediately after the bomb made contact with the mother spider, her legs which were tapping on the wall mockingly gave out and spread in a relaxed manner, like she was just doped. Zoe and the spectators choked on their own laughter after seeing the mother spider nosediving rapidly with her legs flailing around without a single control on their movement. However, that didn't last for even 2 seconds before she regained her control and tried to stick back to the wall. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click #48825741298691972 for visiting. Poof! Too bad, a second bomb with the same inducement nullified her efforts, forcing her to continue free-falling. Thud! Her body smashed into the metallic ground, sending a shockwave in the area. 10 meters in height wasn't enough to make her dizzy from the fall, thus she immediately jumped on all of her 20 legs, trying to return to her favorable position. But would Felix let her achieve so that easily after all the effort he had done? Not in a lifetime. Felix dashed towards her while firing continuously his azure bombs. He didn't stop even when the mother spider was clearly affected again by the inducement. As she leaned on the wall with her legs shaking, trying her best to stick to the surface and climb back. Unfortunately, bomb after bomb ruined her attempts at removing the numbness that she was feeling at the tips of her sexuals. Felix chose the neurotoxin inducement just to counter those sexuals, which were the source of her ability to have a firm grip on the wall. This inducement simply interferes with the function of the nervous system that carries signals around the body. Thus, each time the mother spider gave orders to her limbs to move, she only felt numbness and irritating tingling, like a colony of ants crawling over her body. The feeling was the same as someone hit his elbow hard with a solid object. That numbness and tingling sensation that followed after was what the mother spider was being affected by. The only difference between the two was that she felt that sensation throughout her entire body. One could only imagine the misery she was feeling now. Some may question that paralyze inducement had the exact effect, but it wasn't really that similar. After all, paralyze affected both the sensation and the movement of the body, meanwhile neurotoxin inducement affected only the sensation. If Felix had the option of using paralyze, he wouldn't hesitate for even a second. Unfortunately, paralyze bombs had a small dose to fully affect oversized bodies. After all, paralyze literally affected the entire body, interior and exterior, and 2 whiffs from a bomb weren't going to make it happen. Is it over already? Gasps came from the crowd, as they saw Felix's paralyzed aura engulf the mother spider, who was leaning on the wall, still not giving up on climbing it. Sadly, the moment she stepped inside Felix's aura range, her limbs froze stiffly, twitching and quivering from time to time akin to an electric shock coursing through her body. She might be able to resist his bomb inducements, however, Felix's aura was an entirely different matter. Anyone who stepped inside was doomed to perish. Why aren't you tapping your feet anymore? Felix cracked his knuckles with a smug smile on his face as he approached the immobilized mother spider step by step. Immediately after reaching her face, which was packed with red eyes teared in a disgusting manner, he recoiled a step back from the sight. Revolted, Felix curled up his mouth and began punching those eyes, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, bursting them off into a cloud of blood and sticky liquid akin to popping off bubble wraps. Due to his close distance, he wasn't spared from being showered by those liquids. Nonetheless, Felix just closed his eyes and mouth shut and continued his bloodthirsty attack, trying to end the battle as fast as possible. Who knows if the mother spider may pull off something outside of his plan. After all, just because she wasn't screaming in anguish due to the paralyzing effect, it didn't mean she wasn't feeling the pain and the horror of her approaching death. It was a known fact that beasts were most dangerous while being cornered to the limit. Mother Spider was no different. Felix sensed that she would do something to counterattack, or at least stop his offense. He just didn't know when and how, thus he had to make sure that he caused enough damage before so. Screech! 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 Speak of the devil and he shall appear, as the forgotten army of spiderlings, who were standing behind Felix outside of his aura, finally made a move. They kept yelling in agitation while running towards unexpectedly each other. They collided and crashed against each other. Yet, every time it happened only one spiderling gets left behind. The other one totally disappeared like he just got devoured, and the size of the remaining spiderling was the best proof of so, as it grew from having a human adu.l.t's head size to having double that size. However, before this spiderling could even screech at successfully devouring his brother, he got instantly devoured by a bigger version of it. This process of merging kept happening over and over again until only one gigantic spiderling was left behind. But honestly, at this point, it shouldn't be called spiderling anymore, but Mother Spider. A new and healthy version of it. Felix's senses weren't wrong in the slightest, as she truly had a hidden card he didn't read about or simply forgot. After all, he read its details long ago, and he was bound to forget an ability or two. Get latest level CHPTers on NVE/LBJ/N.C/M. It was not like the Mother Spider was the only beast he had read about, but just one of the tens of thousands. His memory was bound to fail him sooner or later. The only way to avoid so was by asking Asna to dive deep within his memories and bring all the details on the Mother Spider. Alas, she brutally rejected his simple request of helping him with the plan. Don't even mention asking her to do such a taxing task. Look behind you! Leader Emma shouted out loud until her voice went hoarse, hoping to warn Felix of the danger creeping behind his back. Yet, Felix was deaf to her warning, as he continued to smash eye after eye, totally engrossed in his bloodthirstiness. He was worried about the Mother Spider making a move, but for those cute spiderlings behind him, he utterly ignored them even though he heard their screeches. He simply assumed that it was the Mother Spider making her anguish heard using them. Plus he was confident that no matter what they threw at him it wouldn't affect him much. All of their attacks were absolutely useless against him. If they dashed inside his aura, they would get paralyzed. If they spit poison in his direction, they would simply disgust him. As for using their webs, he could simply corrode them with an acid bomb. Felix had everything calculated in his head. Too bad, he was absolutely clueless about the Mother Spider's ability to merge the spiderlings and create another version of herself. Without making any noise, the second Mother Spider turned around and pointed her rear in Felix's direction. The spectators held their breaths in anticipation, not knowing what she was planning on doing. Was she going to make a cocoon out of him and drag him away from the main body? Or simply use her silk as a weapon and straightway kill him? Phew! Their thoughts were answered after seeing a long thick silky string, resembling a metal rod suddenly projected at Felix's back. It moved so fast, that Felix managed to move only an inch to the left by pure instinct he honed throughout the years. However, his reflexive dodge wasn't enough to get him out of this ambush unscathed. Arg! He groaned in pain while clutching the silky string that just pierced his left shoulder slightly above his lung. His dodge wasn't totally useless after all. What the hell? Just as he tried to rearrange his thoughts after this deadly ambush, the rod that he was gripping suddenly pulled back, dragging him with it. Straight away, Felix unclutched his grip, not wanting to continue getting dragged like this. He knew that the Mother Spider must not leave his aura range no matter what. Or else, it would definitely escape upward, and this time there was no way in hell she would let herself get hit by the Azure Bomb. Ouch. F*** me. Felix gritted his teeth and stood up with his hand pressuring tightly the gaping wound on his shoulder that was left behind by the rod. Furious at failing her ambush, the second mother spider screeched and sent another thick silky string towards his head this time. Felix rolled to the side awkwardly, dodging her attack by a hair strand. His movement was truly slower than he was at his peak, but it was only a natural outcome after getting gravely wounded like that. Every time he made a large movement, blood couldn't help but gush from the wound down his chest and back. This is probably Landlord's first time getting heavily wounded in his 2 games. Zoe exclaimed with a hint of surprise in her tone. She truly somewhat believed that Felix was an invincible and untouchable player from what she had seen so far. That notion was installed not just in her mind, but in every spectator who followed him through his 2 games. However, after seeing him constantly jump around with difficulty, trying his best to avoid the incoming barrage of those sharp strings, the spell that was clouding their minds was broken. Felix was but a normal player like everyone else. He was bound to get hurt and lose fights as well. Nothing shocking or surprising, especially when he was going against a legendary beast solo. He was literally fighting it using only 2 abilities, while 10 players, combining their strengths, couldn't even touch the mother spider. Please do something. Emma kept on chewing her lips, hoping that Felix might turn the situation around. However, the odds were apparently against him. The second mother spider kept on pressuring him by releasing string after string. Sometimes she even mixed some webs in between, trying to capture him instead of killing him. She had only one thought in her mind, and that was to free her main body from his aura. Thus everything was on the table. Get latest double CHDRs on NVE/LBJ/N.C/M. Her ability switch made it difficult for Felix to dodge and counterattack, as each time she threw a web, he had to respond instantly with an acid bomb, exploding it on his body, so when the web reached him it gets corroded immediately. If only he was allowed to switch aura inducement from paralyzing to acid, her attacks wouldn't have been causing such trouble for him. However, he couldn't do so, since the main body wouldn't take a single second before it relieved herself from the paralyze effect and climb upward. If that happened, Felix could forget about touching that legendary chest. He would probably find it difficult to even escape in one piece from being in a 2v1. Hence, he must figure something out quickly without using his aura. He was losing blood rapidly from the wound, and if the battle didn't finish ASAP, he would truly faint in the middle of the fight. Sign, I guess only one option left. Poof! Felix exploded another acid bomb on himself as protection and did double back handspring, reaching the mother spider's main body in a split second. He gritted his teeth over the sudden pain that assaulted him from his injury after aggrieving it with such a large movement. However, he soon ignored it and jumped on her body, dodging midair another string that was aiming at his thigh. The moment he landed on her body, he crouched between her abdomen and carapace, hiding thoroughly from the second mother spider's aggression. After all, she couldn't aim at him without the risk of hitting her main body instead. After seeing that it was impossible to kill Felix anymore, the second mother spider switched to throwing webs again, planning to cocoon him with the main body. Unfortunately, before the web even reached its target, Felix created 2 acid bombs with just a thought, leaving his hands free to strike the abdomen as he pleased. Poof! He exploded one bomb, countering the web successfully, and instantly created another, not daring to stop or care about his energy consumption anymore. The second mother spider was firing web after web continuously, clearly desperate on removing Felix on top of her main body. But who could blame her though? Bam! Bam! Felix's punches were literally causing cracks to appear on the hard shell of the abdomen. Felix didn't want to target this part of the body, even though it had her lungs and heart was due to this hard shell that needed a minute or so of non-stop attacks to just make a small opening. Meanwhile, the head of the mother spider might have those disgusting eyes all over it, still, its defenses weren't even close to its counterpart. That's why Felix only targeted her abdomen after being left without a better option. He knew that his acid bombs must keep exploding periodically and constantly on top of him, creating a mini aura that acted as a protective shield against those webs. But the cost of doing so was definitely going to put a dent in Felix's energy tank. He didn't want to throw everything on this battle and be left N.A.K.E.D after it. Who knows if a squad of 4 or 5 decided to gang up on him after seeing his messed up shoulder. Especially if he met with hardcore players participating in the bet. There was no way in hell they would walk away from Felix, since killing him was equivalent to getting a new chance in emerging as the winner in the wager. In the end, he still went for it, and currently, it was working like a charm. As the second mother spider was on the verge of losing her mind after seeing that her main body's abdomen shell was getting fractured from the middle, exactly above her heart. The second mother spider was getting agitated because she felt that her main body's shell wasn't going to last for long. Yet, she could do nothing to stop it. Heck, she couldn't even cocoon her main body and drag it away, as the mini acid aura was covering both of them. Screech! Screech! She merely kept moving in circles around the aura and firing her webs, hoping that his mini aura had a slight opening that she could take advantage of. Unfortunately, Felix made sure that it was tight-proof, covering both him and the mother spider fully. Bam! Shatter! After consistently hitting the same spot until his knuckles began to bleed, Felix finally managed to shatter the shell, breaking it apart and exposing her heart that was beating at 186 beats/min or so. It was obvious that the mother spider was scared shitless about her fast-approaching death, and her furious screech turning into pitiful wails were enough as proof of so. Although Felix heard those wails loud and clear, he still gripped his fist tightly and lifted it up expressionlessly. Ba-am! Without a single ounce of hesitation, he brought it down fiercely, striking the long tube-shaped heart that was extending from one end of the abdomen to the other. Screech! The mother spider made her pained cry heard using her second body after her heart burst into a shower of blood and liquid. However, her wail didn't last for long, before her second body disappeared into light particles, marking the deactivation of her ability. Awestruck, Zoe and the spectators watched Felix withdrawing his bloodied fist from the inside of her body and raise it above his head for a split second as a celebration, still dripping with blood. The battle was finally over. Whoa! Landlord UF*King monster. Holy shit! Who took a picture of his pose? Send it to me please. Me as well, I am going to use it as my screensaver. He actually slew a legendary tier 2 beast solo. Landlord! 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 The silence that was deafening the stadium before immediately was replaced by chaos breaking out after seeing the battle finally conclude in such an astonishing manner. The spectators weren't the only ones who were losing their shit, as the VIP viewers, who were part of clans, agencies, leagues, clubs, or even high-ranked players coming to relax by watching a lower ELO game, were tongue-tied and mind-blown by Felix's victory. Before the battle even began, they were even more pessimistic about his chances of slaying the mother spider than Zoe's. They believed that he was biting more than he could chew after they saw him struggle to win against the terror serpent. Yet, it never occurred in their minds that Felix's abilities were pure counter to the mother spider's elements. His acid inducement utterly destroyed her silk element, while his poison immunity allowed him to nullify the mother spider's most iconic poison completely. Thus, the mother spider was handicapped before the battle even began. However, none of them disparaged his achievement of killing her solo due to this, as they knew that countering others and getting countered was a natural outcome in every battle. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click hashtag #slastwhale_48894232605293971 for visiting. Hence, no one could rob his victory. Not even those high-ranked players. The Green Mamba clan elder Brandy was sitting as well in a VIP room, spectating Felix from the moment the game started. "You forced me here, telling me that he would definitely underperform in his second game." Elder Brandy turned his head, staring at the young man covered in green scales, and chuckled. "Is this what you call underperforming, Mirage? TSK, he wasn't bad, I give him that. He is worthy to be an inner member of our clan." Mirage clicked his tongue in irritation over being teased like this by his teacher. "Still, the game is not over yet." He gave a half shrug with a smirk and added, his high-profile hunting already made the participants in the wager join forces against him. After he opens up that golden chest, they would definitely rush to snap his head. Indeed, what's even worse is that his condition is not optimal. The elder sighed. He must have used most of his energy by now, leaving him exposed to their aggression. "Heh, don't forget his wound, elder," Mirage quickly added. Elder Brandy didn't respond, he simply shook his head lightly, as he gazed at Felix jumping from the mother spider who was breaking into light particles, leaving behind a number shimmering with golden light. 1,000 GP? Mirage mumbled the number under his breath after his eyes were drawn to its blinding light. A whopping 1k GP from just slaying the beast. He couldn't imagine how many points the chest that was guarded by it had in it. A hint of jealousy and envy couldn't help but begin to build up in his heart after he calculated Felix's total points. 6,700 GP without even opening the golden chest. King hell, I don't even have half of it in my possession. To actually be a high-tiered gold player, but have less GP than a player on his second game ever, was truly a bit hard to swallow. Heh, don't get attached to them, since you won't live long to use them. Mirage smirked and switched his vision to the middle of the maze, eyeing a gathering of 25 players or such, just standing around a sealed-shut gate silently and patiently, resembling a bunch of guardian statuses. One could only wonder what they were up to, standing near the maze exit like that without battling for the right to be the first to enter it. 7 sit nvelb/n. C/m for L test vels. The entire situation screamed with danger. Yet, Felix had absolutely no idea about any of this, as he simply walked towards the glittering golden chest with a hand gripping tightly his shoulder, applying pressure to minimize any further bleeding. Although the mother spider left a gaping hole in his shoulder, Felix wasn't worried that he would bleed to the death, since his body recovery speed was enough to close the hole if enough proper rest was given. Ultimately, he was an awakened human, who enjoyed some physical perks of the beast he merged with, such as enhanced recovery. It might not be as good as unlocking an ability for it, but it was better than human slow recovery speed. That's why Felix's previous wounds caused by the sandstorm weren't giving him any problems during the fight, as they got healed properly over time. All awakened humans enjoyed those perks as well, just like in the case of Mastermania. Any commoner who had their body skin melted by Felix's acid aura would need concentrated care in a hospital to just stand up again. Meanwhile, Mastermania was seen walking normally like he wasn't exposed to such an attack. If recovery speed was this good for lower-stage bloodliners, one could only guess how good it would be for higher-stage bloodliners. "Are you going to continue hunting?" Asna suddenly asked curiously. "Nope." Felix shook his head. "I am done for now. My energy has reached the red bar. I doubt I would be able to kill another epic beast with it." He tried to shrug his shoulders like he always did, but pain instantly assaulted him, giving him a reminder of his wound. "Plus, my condition is truly not optimal for any more fights." "I see, I guess you give up on the championship then," she said. "Championship, huh?" Felix smiled bitterly while leaning against the chest. If he wasn't hurt like this and had only 20% of energy, he might have gone for the exit now and blocked any moron who tried to use it. Alas, he would rather chill in his place and wait until the game ends than go risk getting himself killed by aggressively hunting others. Felix knew that based on his current condition, he was nowhere near achieving championship unless by some miracle no one managed to find the exit throughout this long period. But Felix wasn't that optimistic about it happening. He was glad that the game was delayed until he secured the legendary chest. He couldn't ask for more. Although, not winning the game would deny him from having a wish and delay him from reaching the gold rank faster, still, Felix was more than satisfied by his earnings in this game. 6,700 gigabytes without opening the chest, or counting the GP of the players participating in the wager. He was damn certain that his total GP was going to reach 20k or surpass it. So, as much as it saddened him to give up on the championship, he wasn't really that annoyed about it happening. He already achieved the target he set before the game. For now, he just wished to take a break and relax a bit until the game ends. He fought for way too long during this game. Well, I don't mind stopping now, I had enough fun. Asnus stretched on the bed with a satisfied smile. I'm glad Felix smiled as well. However, it was soon replaced with a grin as he tapped on the chest with his leg, sending shivers down the spine of the spectators, who knew what was coming. I guess it's time to open this big boy. Just as Felix raised his leg, planning to kick the chest wide open under the cries and wails of the despairing crowd, his AP bracelet suddenly vibrated and displayed a notification, alarming him about the upcoming third shuffle alarm. The timing was truly perfect, as Felix spent about 20 minutes to reach the chest and the rest was spent during the battle. He was quite lucky to end the fight before the third shuffle, otherwise, he would have been forced to give up on slaying the mother spider. Damn, that was a close call. He sighed in relief and closed off the alarm notification. He withdrew his leg and leaned back on the chest again, pausing his attempt at opening it up. The spectators didn't know why he stopped, nonetheless, they were happy that the inevitable was delayed for a few more seconds. They truly couldn't handle seeing that magnificent golden chest get ruined by his thuggish personality as well. Alas, it is what it is. Meanwhile, Zoe knew exactly why he stopped, as she also made alarm for the alarm, to not get embarrassed over forgetting about the shuffles again. However, she was still confused about his reason for doing so, since opening the chest wouldn't take him even a split second. There was no need to wait until the shuffle passes. However, Felix, unbothered by the resounding shuffle alarm that just went off, kept leaning against the chest casually. Peep. 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 What the hell is up to? Confused, she kept switching vision between him and the reverse countdown on the large screen. 7, 6, 5, 3, 2. Just as the countdown was about to reach its end, Felix swiftly turned around and kicked the chest wide open. Immediately he froze in his kicking position as the maze began to shuffle its walls, marking the start of the third shuffle. However, no one gave a glance at the walls, which were dancing around the maze harmoniously, separating into halves and connecting to each other randomly, yet with a sense of systematicness. No one paid attention to them, as their focus was captured and entrapped by sudden golden fireworks exploding in the maze's sky. An explosion so big that its bright lights displayed the player's smallest hair skin. The entire maze was brightened up under those fireworks, adding extra beauty to the walls shuffling around continuously. The spectators were stunned speechless by the high-profile way of announcing Felix's successful feat of slaying a legendary beast. They knew that the fireworks were going to be a pleasant and quite admiring view, however, they never expected to be this astonishing. Not in the slightest. Meanwhile, the players were actually the ones who were dumbstruck the most by the sudden explosion. They were just preparing to take advantage of those free seconds of scouting that the shuffle was about to give them, yet those fireworks exploding exactly before the last alarm peep removed any thought of scouting ahead, as their eyes couldn't help but get drawn to the bright light above them, resembling a sun. Shock, disbelief, confusion, dread, and fear, bone-chilling fear, sending goosebumps coursing through their skin. A tide of varied emotions washed over them immediately after seeing a sentence written boldly and artistically in golden characters, like heavens sending down a decree to mortals like them. Landlord has obtained 3,000 GP from a legendary chest. They couldn't believe what their eyes were feeding them, and they honestly didn't dare to. If Felix merely killed another epic beast, they honestly would have simply either respected his strength or envied him. However, when legendary was written boldly in caps, to further highlight the rank of the beast he slew, they had no thoughts of respect nor feelings of envy. The only thing they felt was fear of actually playing with such a humanoid creature without their realization. Slaying a legendary beast solo? Not in their wildest dreams would they have believed that one of them was capable of doing it. Heck, they weren't even confident in achieving that feat by allying together. Yet here they are, seeing with their own eyes, Felix doing what they thought was impossible. A sudden deafening silence descended in the maze. The spectators were speechless by the fireworks' beauty, while the players weren't able to speak, move, or express their overwhelming emotions. Only their eyes and thoughts were moving non-stop, and each had their own thoughts and views over the announcement. Damn it! How could he kill a legendary beast alone? Father definitely going to compare my battle with his. Annoyed, Princess Bird huffed through her nostrils, bastard, continuously making my life hell. If before, she had a chance to talk her way out of her trashy performance, now she was absolutely doomed. After all, in the eyes of everyone, she and Felix both had legendary bloodlines, yet he slew 2 epic beasts and 1 legendary. Meanwhile, she slew only 1 epic beast with extreme difficulty. There was just nowhere to compare their results. Hence, her irritation was quite understandable. Just like before, the shuffle didn't take more than 10 seconds before the walls finished rearranging themselves randomly. In the very center of the maze, a wide-open circular space connected to 4 paths, each leading to the 4 cardinal directions, north, east, west, and south, was packed with 25 players all standing stiffly around a medium-sized closed gate made of the same alloy as the walls, silver and smooth. However, it was shining brightly like a beacon. It was hard to miss. This was the exit of the maze. A closed gate that had to be pushed open in order to clinch the win. From its height and width, it was obvious that pushing it was going to take quite some effort. The players, who were frozen stiffly near it, abruptly regained control over their bodies. However, their eyes were still gazing at the announcement that was fading gradually. No matter how many beasts you kill, or how many points you collect, I will make sure that you never get to use them, landlord. Solar Mist pushed his glasses upward and murmured with a hint of greed, as he stared at the drifting 3,000 GP in the air, we need a change of plans. Calm and collected, he lowered his head, not bothering anymore with the announcement. His emotions were completely sealed behind his stoic expression. Guys, enough staring at the sky like morons and pay attention here. He clapped his hand twice, trying to break off the tense atmosphere that was caused by Felix's mind-boggling achievement. Read the latest stories en novelbin.com. Who are you calling a moron? Pure Muscle lowered his head as well and stared right in Solar Mist's eyes. Know your place, Mr. Solar. We might have a contract forbidding us from acting against each other. But, the next time you insult me, this will be your fate. Pure Muscle pointed his hand toward Solar Mist and gripped his fist tightly, making the air inside his fist explode. The players surrounding them gasped at such a pure demonstration of overwhelming physical strength. Pure Muscle didn't use a single ability to cause such an effect. I apologize for my tongue slip. Surprisingly, Solar Mist didn't lash back at Pure Muscle's threat, he simply bowed his head slightly with a composed expression. King Sissy, can you act like a man for once? Pure Muscle clicked his tongue. However, Solar acted deaf to such a blatant insult. In his eyes, there were more important matters to discuss than to argue with this bushy gorilla. He ignored the hidden sneers and scoffs he was hearing from the players in front of him and said with a polite smile, "Guys, as you have just seen, Landlord wasn't targeting the exit of the maze like we predicted he would after slaying the second epic beast." He sighed, who would have expected that he would actually continue his hunting journey, and nevertheless, target legendary beasts that we treated like a plague in the maze, avoiding them at all costs. The majority of the players who were standing around him all flinched or shivered at hearing Felix's achievement again. Until now, they still couldn't get over it and probably would never do so. Slaying a legendary beast solo was no joking matter. Thus, second thoughts on participating in ambushing Felix were beginning to pop up in their minds. After all, the only reason they even accepted the hardcore players' plan of killing Felix was because they were under a strict slave contract. In other words, they were under their mercy. Felix assumed that it was due to luck that the game was prolonged beyond his expectations, helping him slay beast after beast unhindered. However, in reality, the game was supposed to end right after he slew the terror serpent. A full 40-minute delay was caused by one group, made of 4 players. Solar Mist, Hound Stench, Spirit Visage, and Pure Muscle. They were the first ones to find the maze's exit. Of course, it wasn't at the same time, as Spirit Visage made it first and was followed by the others gradually. They didn't give up on the wager as the rest did after seeing Felix's second announcement of slaying the terror serpent. Instead, they all had one thought in their minds, and that was to stop hunting for beasts and sprint towards the maze exit, hoping to meet up with Felix by chance and kill him. That was the only way to gain another chance at winning the bet. However, it turned out that Felix wasn't the one who they met next to the maze exit, but each other. The moment their eyes made contact, they immediately knew that each of them had the same thought. Thus, instead of fighting for no reason, they made an alliance to kill Felix. Solar Mist, who proposed the rule of having no allies before, explicitly mentioned forbidding allying together against beasts, and not players. This meant that allying together was within the wager rules. No one knows if Solar Mist planned to leave such a loophole, or it was merely by chance. Whatever it was, an alliance was created after stamping a contract, forbidding them from acting against each other, at least before Felix died. That being said, they had absolutely no clue where Felix's current location was. Hence, instead of trying to find him inside this endless labyrinth, they decided to wait for him to come by himself. After all, the first thought that should pop up on Felix's mind after finishing hunting the beasts was to sprint towards the exit and block anyone trying to win the game by using it. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click #49081578525090081 for visiting. One should never forget that the player with the highest points after the game duration passes would be the champion. Felix, if he didn't have the golden scroll pointing at the legendary chest, would have done exactly what they have assumed. So, their plan might not be the best, but at least it had a quite high probability of succeeding. Too bad, they waited and waited, yet the only ones who were showing up constantly were players who weren't part of the wager, finally managing to find the exit. The first thought that came up to Pure Muscle's mind was to kill them, in order to protect the exit. The last thing they wanted was for a total trash player to end up winning the game, while they won absolutely nothing. However, before Pure Muscle made a move, Solar Mist proposed another idea, a wicked idea of capturing those players and forcing them to abide to their wishes. In other words, helping them ambush Felix when he shows up. Solar Mist wasn't a stupid proud player who thought that he would be able to kill Felix even after hearing that he slew 2 epic beasts solo. No, even if didn't hear those announcements, he would never underestimate an opponent. Thus, he would always use his brain to seek the easiest and most efficient plan to fulfill his desires. Using those players like slaves was but one way to demonstrate his way of thinking and acting. However, his thought process rubbed Pure Muscle in the wrong way, as he assumed that Solar Mist lacked confidence in their collected strength to kill even one player. However, the rest of the party didn't share the same view as Pure Muscle. In fact, they supported Solar Mist's plan 100%, as they believed that having more players around them would only turn beneficial. No one would say no to free help. Ultimately, Pure Muscle's disagreement over such a cowardly behavior was overruled based on their voting contract. So, they began their capturing plan by laying traps and ambushes around the maze's exit. Any player who got captured by their ways received only two choices from the party: one, sign a contract, entailing that inside the maze's life would be under their wishes and orders. The contract turned void either by death or after the game ends. Or, they could choose dying straight away with a bit of dignity. This was the version the spectators had knowledge of, the version they saw and heard with their own eyes. Of course, everyone chose to sign the contract, since even though it was a slave contract, Solar Mist promised them that killing Felix and defending the maze exit was all they wanted from them. Nothing more, nothing less. Though, he didn't add that in the contract, it was merely a verbal promise. Nevertheless, the players weren't stupid to get themselves killed just to protect a bit of their dignity. In their eyes, they had done things way worse in the previous games to mind their actions in public anymore. In the end, the party around the maze's exit kept getting bigger and bigger as it grew by twos and threes each time a player or a party leapt out on the exit. This carried on for 30 minutes until the party had 25 players, all standing near the exit, doing nothing but waiting for Felix to appear. Alas, he never did. Only now did they understood why so. The F***er was hunting a legendary beast, while they were standing like morons for no reason. He was never going to come and probably never planned on doing so. Solar Mist knew that time wasn't on their side to continue hoping that he magically shows up. Heck, after seeing that Felix slew a legendary beast, he was certain that Felix gave up on the championship. Thus, he wanted to change the plan as fast as possible and figure something else with his party. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that the majority would quiver fearfully at him mentioning Felix. Don't you dare have second thoughts on bailing out. Solar Mist narrowed his eyes and threatened, if you don't want to end up getting humiliated right now and right here, you better behave yourselves. Disgruntled noises began to arise within the group at such a blatant threat. However, that was as much as they did to sound their displeasure. As for rioting or crying out loud, they didn't want to get ordered to be stripped nude on a live stream as a punishment for disobeying their orders. It happened a few times already to not get the jest that Solar Mist and his crew meant business. Hence, they could only lower their heads and wish that Felix never shows up to ruin those bastards' plans. Do you guys have a plan to salvage this situation? Solar Mist said calmly to his main party, unbothered by their hateful glares. After a couple of minutes in utter silence, Hound Stench's gruff voice resounded in the area, I have a way to find him. Immediately after hearing what his ally just said, Solar Mist didn't jump from joy or sigh in relief, but actually glared at him with a furious look. He felt raging fury at his partner having a solution all along but still deciding to hide it until this point. Just how much time did they waste standing here waiting for Felix to come by himself while they could have literally gone hunting him down already? What the hell are you saying? Pure Muscle, who had an ever shorter fuss than Solar Mist, gritted his teeth, trying his best to suppress his anger and not jump on Hound Stench. Let me explain first before exploding. Undisturbed by his ally's furious looks, Hound Stench sighed and said, I have an ability that allows me to track anyone's location by smell. However, for it to take effect, I need Landlord's unique smell. So what's the problem with that? Pure Muscle didn't even let him continue his explanation, before snapping at him. Do you have his smell on you? Did you even meet up with him inside the maze? Hound Stench's gruff voice neither rose nor lowered as he threw a barrage of questions at Pure Muscle. He simply sighed and added, "I doubt that any of you met up with landlord inside the maze. If you did, you wouldn't have been standing here alive and kicking." Tongue-tied, Pure Muscle unclutched his tight fist, gradually cooling himself off. Even with his potato brain, he easily figured out what he meant. As based on what he had seen from Felix's treatment inside the game hall and the interview segment, he was certain that he wasn't a merciful person to leave a player walk away from his clutches. Especially now that there was a bet going on, where even 1 GP was important. Wait a second. Didn't all of us meet and interact with landlord before we were dropped in the maze? Quick-witted as always, Solar Mist easily found a loophole in Hound Stench's reason. "Heh, do you think I am stupid not to notice such a thing?" Hound Stench glared at Solar Mist and said, "If I could track landlord using such an outdated smell, I would have done so alone without needing to come here and hope to encounter him by chance. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click #2in1_49081591678420036 for visiting." Solar Mist nodded his head in understanding. What Hound Stench said was logical and within reason. After all, if he had such a busted ability that allowed him to track anyone no matter how far the distance separating them without having a single weakness, that ability should honestly belong to a legendary beast. However, Solar Mist knew that Hound Stench's bloodline was from an epic Tier 2 beast called Hellhound. So, having such a weakness was completely understandable. The stronger the stench of the target, the easier it is for me to locate its whereabouts. Hound Stench shrugged his shoulders. "I doubt any one of you met up with him during the last 50 minutes or so. Right?" Solar Mist's expression instantly turned ugly after seeing that everyone was shaking their heads. However, he still didn't give up, as he promised them that anyone who met with Felix during that duration would get 100 million SC reward. Unfortunately, no one spoke or stepped forward to help. Hound Stench shook his head in disappointment and returned to his position, standing silently like before with his oversized brown coat, covering his entire body, except for his exposed bald head. He never held any hope for those players claiming that in their journey they spotted Felix. However, he still put out his card in the open to extinguish all options. Now that he did, hope for locating Felix was truly snuffed out. No one was affected the hardest by this failure than Solar Mist. He was truly on the verge of losing his shit and start massacring those useless pieces of garbage that he wasted time and his reputation to sign a contract with, for no benefits at all. The moment he proposed the infamous slave contract in the game, his reputation among the spectators fell sharply. Of course, his party members who were also in it weren't spared from being looked down upon by the spectators. Slave contracts were frowned upon, just slightly below placing bounties on the players' heads. After all, those contracts ruined two of the spectators' most favorite things in the game: death and balance. The players who signed the slave contract were supposed to die and not walk around freely with a second chance at life. Although their lives were under the mercy of others, they still had a chance to leave the game alive. The perfect example was those 21 players who just signed with Solar Mist's party. They should have died in a gruesome manner to entertain them, not stand around the maze exit like statues doing absolutely nothing. This example also highlighted the newly messed up balance of the game. If Felix decided to rush to the exit and not fight the legendary beast, how was he supposed to fight against 25 players all at once? In the eyes of the spectators, that was purely a sure death trap, which was inescapable by no one. Thus, anyone who proposed the screwed-up contract was sure to get hated and booed by them. This was the reason why boos and insults were thrown before when Zoe switched the camera focus from Felix to the maze exit after they finished watching his replay. How could they not, after seeing with their own eyes Solar Mist's party hunt down players and force them to sign a slave contract to kill Felix? Whether they hated Felix's guts or not, that wasn't the proper way they wanted him to die. Thus, seeing Solar Mist's ugly expression and his party disappointed looks after failing to create another plan made them feel an unspeakable euphoria. "Now what?" Pure Muscle abruptly asked, breaking the desolate silence in the area. However, no one answered him, as they also had no idea what to do. Solar Mist kept fiddling with his glasses absent-mindedly. No one knows if he was in deep thought on the situation or he simply gave up and kept gazing in a daze. He was supposedly their think tank. If he ran out of ideas, then they truly should just accept their loss. "I believe I can help you out with your problem." Out of nowhere, the Queen AI's monotonous voice resounded in everyone's ears, stunning them speechless, not knowing how to react to such mind-boggling news. Who could blame them though? The Queen wasn't supposed to assist anyone in the games. She had absolutely no authority to interfere with how the players were supposed to play or fight. As long as everything was within the rules, she must stay in her place. The players' first thought after hearing what she said was that someone within the party was playing a prank on them by using her voice. Thus, they turned left and right, trying to spot the bastard who was trying to anger those 4 hardcore players at this tense moment. They truly wanted to lay low-key like this until the game ends to regain their freedom. Yet, a retard wasn't able to read the mood properly, and they were going to suffer with him. Who the F***CK did that? Just like they assumed, Pure Muscle was the first to respond, as he shouted at them with a murderous gaze. He was truly planning on killing someone. Frightened, the players gulped and took a step back, not wanting to get targeted by this furious gorilla. Just as Pure Muscle pointed his finger at a player randomly, planning to snap his neck to ease his fury, the Queen's voice resounded again. "It was me." This time the source where it came from was clear. Everyone turned their heads and stared at a man wearing a white mask and a black hoodie, coming out from the wall's shadow gradually, starting from his head to his feet. Master Mania? Surprised, Solar Mist quickly wore back his glasses, not daring to believe his eyes. Master Mania, a well-known idol, who breathed attention in and out, was actually hiding his face and voice? Was the sun rising from the west as well? Although none of them saw his face or heard his voice, they immediately knew his identity, and for a simple reason actually. There were only 2 Shadow Element users in this game. That's right, Master Mania and another player with a rare bloodline were the only ones from the 100 or so players participating in this game that had the Shadow Element. Master Mania, who was a popular idol, had all of his abilities already exposed to the public. He was famously known for having the passive ability Shadow's Cloak that allowed him to submerge in the shadows and travel through them. "What the hell happened to you, pretty boy?" Straightforward as always, Pure Muscle asked impolitely what was in everyone's mind. The area descended into an awkward silence, as the players were waiting patiently for Master Mania to answer, yet, he simply stood silently in front of the maze exit, not bothering to address Pure Muscle's question. Suddenly, he put his hand on the closed door and caressed it softly. The players were merely confused by his actions, and not worried that he would push it open and exit the maze, emerging as the winner. Ultimately, he was still part of the wager, and anyone participating in it was forbidden from winning the game by using it. Felix proposed this rule, just to keep those hardcore players inside the maze, whether they liked it or not. He really did one on us, didn't he? He sighed through his nose since his mouth was completely ruined by Felix's acid aura. If it wasn't for so, he wouldn't have been using the Queen's voice as a means of speech. He sure did. Solar Mist sighed after understanding what he meant. "I heard what Mr. Hound said." Master Mania removed his hand from the gate and said, "I believe I have what he needs." The moment Hound Stench heard what he said, he clapped his hands twice while saying, "Everyone, please give us some space. I don't want your smells to interfere with my ability." "You heard the man, move." Pure Muscle means was always rougher as he pushed and kicked those before him. Within a couple of seconds, the area was emptied, leaving only Mastermania and Hound Stench near the gate. Based on the heavy burnt-off smell your body is emitting, I believe you fought with Landlord and lost. Right? Hound Stench asked. None of your business. Mastermania glared at him. I wasn't asking you to tell me about how it went, but to know if you managed to touch him during your battle. Wait a second, you did touch him, right? After seeing that Mastermania was avoiding having eye contact with him, Hound Stench's expression turned a bit unsightly. How can he be this incompetent? What a waste of a fine assassin bloodline. Hound Stench gave him a disdainful gaze and asked, as long as you reached 5 meters, I can still create a smell mark, LL new rise at N0V/LBI/.cm. Mastermania's eyes light up after hearing so. He remembered that he was paralyzed exactly 5 meters away from Felix. Go ahead, start using your ability. After hearing a positive response, Hound Stench sighed in relief and ordered him while opening his brown coat, look here. A bit humiliated to get ordered around, Mastermania gritted his black teeth while staring at Hound Stench's stomach with a hint of fear. The spectators who had no idea about Hound Stench were stupefied at the sight of a large dark hound's head merged with his stomach. The hound had long white fangs protruding outside of its vicious-looking mouth, a spherical black nose with 3 nostrils, sharp hairy ears at the top of its head, and lastly, its eyelids were closed shut, not letting the spectators see its eyes. The spectators didn't know if the thing was alive or not, however, Mastermania, who had it in front of his face, knew that it was alive and kicking. Its nasty breath kept assaulting his nose each time it exhaled a breath of air. Wake up, lazy head! Hound Stench smacked it right in its scalp, yet only a soft growling sound responded to him. If you don't wake up in 3 seconds, you could forget about eating dinner tonight. Hound Stench twisted both of its ears just like a mother does to her child. Ooh-hoo! The hound cried pitifully while opening its eyelids, exposing 2 bright red eyes, emitting a dangerous vibe. Stop whining, it doesn't even hurt that much. Hound Stench gave a gentle smile, as he gazed at his partner in arm acting like a drama queen. Some spectators almost throw up in revulsion at such a messed up sight. They didn't have the guts to continue watching Hound Stench talking to that beast stuck in his stomach like it wasn't a big deal. This was probably the first time in their life to see a player who obtained one of the rarest top mutations. Rebirth! That's right, the hound had its own consciousness and thought process. And not just an active or passive ability. Such a rare mutation could happen only 1 in a million times. Plus, it had way too many strict conditions to just have that one chance of getting it. The first one was to awaken or replace a bloodline using at least 30% at once, a quite difficult hurdle to achieve but not impossible. The second one was to have at least a 75% affinity rating. Those 2 conditions must be met first if one wanted to have a chance to awaken the consciousness of the beast he merged with. After all, the bloodline itself had pieces of dormant consciousness, memories, and such. If it wasn't for so, humans shouldn't be able to integrate with beasts. That being said, Hound Stench's mutation resulted in having the hellhound's head protruding from his stomach. Probably not a lot of bloodliners would hope for that to happen. Use smell absorption on this idiot. He pointed his finger at Mastermania and added, absorb only the smells he was met with between 40 minutes to 60 minutes ago. Lazy and muddled, the hound yawned widely with his tongue dripping with saliva, sending a wave of nasty stench towards Mastermania, causing him to gag and almost vomit his guts out. Coco brought his nose close to Mastermania's face and abruptly inhaled a deep breath through it. Colorful particles with multiple different colors came out from Mastermania's body and went rapidly inside Coco's nose. No one was able to see those foggy colors, except for Hound Stench. Coco kept repeating inhaling through his nose and exhaling through his mouth until nothing was coming out of Mastermania anymore. Okay, we are done. Hound Stench let go of Mastermania's head and took 2 steps back, putting some distance between them. He closed his eyes and focused on the many smells that Coco just absorbed. The passive ability he was relying on was called smell deduction. It allowed him to memorize an arsenal of smells without getting confused in the slightest. The best part, he could differentiate between them even if the two smells were only 0.01% different. Hound's stench made sure to memorize everyone's unique smell when they were standing on the stage during the game hall, including Felix. Thus, what he was trying to do now was comparing the smells that Coco just absorbed with Felix's scent that he memorized. Minutes passed by and still, Hound's stench had his eyes closed deep in his zone, eliminating one smell after the other rapidly. The smells Master Mania was exposed to during that 15 minutes window was quite a large figure. Hound's stench had to make sure that he was error-free in his comparison, lest Felix's smell pass by him unnoticed. "Come on, faster, faster, faster." Solar Mist kept murmuring under his breath while his eyes were glued to his AP bracelet clock, ticking continuously. Who knew that it would tick for whole 5 minutes before Hound's stench finally opened his eyes with a satisfied smile. Without further ado, Hound's stench waved his hand, signaling for the players to return. Solar Mist was the first to dash forward, running as fast as he could, unbothered about keeping his classy calm image anymore. The rest of his party soon followed after him. "Any good news?" Immediately after arriving, Solar Mist asked. "It was a close call." Hound's stench clarified, "Landlord's smell that I picked was barely enough to create a tracking mark using my ability." He smiled mildly, "If we didn't have Coco, we may not even be able to use that mark." He patted the happy Coco head, who was huffing with his tongue out, pleased by getting complimented. Although they didn't understand what he meant by the second part, Solar Mist and Spirit Visage still thanked Hound's stench over his effort like proper gentlemen. "All right, Mr. Hound, can we go now?" he asked impatiently. "We can move at any moment now." Hound's stench pointed at the 22 players and asked, "However, we can't take everyone with us. They might drag our speed down." Solar Mist nodded his head in agreement and clapped his hands twice. "Listen up. Those who are confident in their speed or strength, join us in our hunt and you will be rewarded with 100 million SC. Although the players got hyped up after seeing the reward gets mentioned up, not a lot of them decided to join the main party. Actually, only 4 players raised their hands, showing their desire to participate. Despite the enticing reward, the majority of players still preferred to remain near the exit and especially away from the main party. They weren't frightened by Felix's strength, but by the main party itself. Who knows, they might actually fail to locate Felix successfully during their journey. Which meant, Solar Mist would lose his shit and start killing them like harvesting cabbages. They had no way to defend or resist him after signing that contract. Hence, in their eyes, it was much to stay as far as possible from them until the game ends and they regain their freedom. Useless pieces of trash. Irritated and irked, Solar Mist gave them a death glare and stopped bothering with them. He knew exactly what was in their minds, and he had no time to correct their thoughts by torturing some of them. "If you are not coming, then you better make sure that no one opens up the gate," he shouted. "Anyone who reached 5 meters near the gate, cut his goddamn head off. You hear me?" Solar Mist's fiery personality started to show up more often. Spirit Visage mused as he gazed at Solar Mist losing his composure yet again. Heh, Landlord was right, fire element users shouldn't try to act calm and cold. It just does not fit them at all. Without waiting to receive their response, Hound's stench pointed at the northern path and sprinted with his coat flapping in the air, exposing his stomach, which had Coco with its tongue out. The rest of the party swiftly chased after him. Master Mania went to the nearest shadow in the wall and submerged himself in it, planning to chase after them while hidden. A whopping 15 minutes passed since the moment Felix's announcement had passed. This meant they only had 45 minutes to reach Felix and kill him. Plus, even if they did kill him before the game ends, how were they going to surpass Princess Bird, who was obviously above them in ranks? No one knows what was their end game. Was it to simply kill Felix and wish that Princess Bird had died somewhere, or they already had a plan to emerge as the winner after killing Felix? 15 minutes before the game ends. I can't believe she actually cheated on him. What a b*tch. Screw you. What do you know? He clearly wasn't treating her properly, it was only natural that she takes revenge somehow. PFFFF. I never saw a wife cheat on her husband because he refused to take her shopping 3 times a week. Felix laughed. I didn't think your taste in drama would be this shitty, Asna. Felix! Stop bad-mouthing my dramas already. Otherwise, I will cut all ties with you. She yelled at him with flushed cheeks, finally not able to handle his nitpicking. The bastard asked her to pick a drama to watch from the collection he downloaded before entering the game. He promised her that no matter what she picked, they would continue watching it together even after the game end. Yet now, he was trash-talking the plot during the very first episode. How could she continue enjoying her watch when he kept laying those negative remarks every goddamn minute? Yeah, whatever. Utterly bored, Felix waved his hand dismissively while sitting on the top of the golden chest. It stopped glimmering brightly immediately after he opened it up 45 minutes ago. Felix stopped watching the drama for a second and glanced at the time in his AP bracelet with an odd look. This was already the 5th time he saw the time, and every time, he couldn't understand why the game was still carrying on. He knew that it was nigh impossible that no one actually managed to locate the exit even after 2 hours and 15 minutes. Even adding the 4th shuffle that happened 15 minutes earlier, still, it didn't make sense to him. Those players who didn't participate in the wager with them might not be as good as the hardcore players, but Felix was confident that at least one of them should have lucked out on the exit by now. He wasn't really complaining or anything. In fact, he wanted nothing more but for the players to not find out the exit in the next 15 minutes to help him get the win as well. It's just that he found it a bit odd, that's all. Did Goddess Luck finally notice me? He mused in a good mood. It was about time I get showered with some luck. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience. Please click #49240850693154138 for visiting. Why wouldn't he be? His wound was completely closed by blood clotting. His total GP had already reached a whopping 9,200, without even calculating the points of the 9 players in the wager. Now, he even had a slight chance of winning the game? His mood was beyond terrific. This game was truly one of the best ones he had, even adding the tens of games he played in his previous life. I can finally join the Ivy League. Dodge Felix. Subconsciously, Felix jerked himself backward, dropping from the chest in an unsightly manner. However, he didn't care about how his dodge turned out, he was just glad he dodged successfully. Wait, why did I have dodge? He thought to himself. Boom! The sound of the chest getting blasted answered his question. Yet, even after he heard the sound, Felix was still confused, because he didn't see what caused such a loud noise. He might have been deep in his thoughts, but his guard was always raised to the limit. He never trusted this false sense of safety. This made things even weirder. His eyes actually failed to see the upcoming attack. If Asna didn't warn him on time, he would have probably got blasted instead of the chest. What the F***ck is going on? He cursed under his breath while peeking with one eye from behind the chest. The area ahead of him was still empty without any sight of the enemy. He activated his ultra-infrared vision, hoping to spot the F***er who wanted to mess with him. Look and behold. His red shimmering eyes showed him 4 humanoid red auras standing 20 meters away from him, another one 40 meters to his left, and finally, 3 hazy auras at 60 meters, one lying on the ground while the other 2 were standing next to it, like bodyguards. Totally freaked out, he gulped a mouthful at this sudden assault. A freaking 8 players were so close to him, yet he didn't have a single clue. If his mental energy wasn't on the verge of exhaustion, he could have afforded to activate his infrared vision once in a while and saw those players sneaking up on him like this. Too bad, he couldn't even keep active for a couple of seconds before his head started to ache. He immediately turned it off, making him narrow his eyes in dread at the empty area in front of him. He knew that his situation was dire. How was he supposed to fight invisible enemies, who throw invisible attacks? "Asna, mind telling me what are you seeing?" he requested. "What do you mean? There are clearly 5 players in front of you. Heck, the guy with the glasses from before was the one who attacked you." She asked in bewilderment, "Can't you see any of this?" "No, nothing appears in my eyesight." "Describe them to me and make it short." He gritted his teeth, "I have a few guesses of what's going on." "No wonder you didn't dodge. I thought you weren't paying attention." Asna stood up from her lying position on the bed with a serious expression. It wasn't the time to act playful. La test novls on, n, vel/. Co. She knew that Felix wasn't in his optimal form to fight 2 players, don't even mention a team made of 5. Thus, instead of describing the players as he asked her, she took a step further and straightaway read his memories. It didn't even take her a split second before figuring out their names. Solar Mist, Pure Muscle, Spirit Visage, and 2 random players who weren't part of the wager with you. She informed him. Sure enough, this was Spirit Visage's doing. Felix said. "Careful, it seems like the stuck-up prick with glasses on is going to attack you again." Asna suddenly warned him. "Asna, you be my eyes from now on, tell me everything that will endanger my life," Felix requested while taking cover behind the chest. Thank God, he never left his position. Otherwise, if he was ambushed like this during his walk, things might not turn out as pretty. The chest was large and indestructible. As long as he remained behind it, he would have a good shield. Careful, they stopped at 10 meters. It seemed like they are not going to continue walking. She warned. Heh, it's because they don't dare to. Felix sneered while snapping his finger, creating one acid bomb in his hand. His energy might be on the border of exhaustion, but they didn't know that. Felix wasn't going to show them any form of weakness, lest they drop all pretense and jump on him together. Their lack of information about his energy level and wariness from his poison aura made them act this cautiously. The only player Felix was truly worried about was Spirit Visage. Based on what he read on Spirit Visage's current known information, he was an illusion element user, who was in possession of an epic Tier 2 ethereal sorrow fiend bloodline. Although his element clearly was a rare grade, like time, space, life, and such, it didn't mean that beasts with illusion elements were all extinct. In fact, from Tier 1 to Tier 4 there were quite a few beasts' bloodlines to pick. They might be rare and expensive as hell, but they could still be bought. However, from Tier 5+, there was absolutely not a single illusion beast found to this date. No one knows if their elusive abilities made it impossible for humans to find them, or they simply didn't exist in the first place. This meant for poor Spirit Visage, his bloodline path was blocked at Stage 3 of replacement. Unless he had a secondary element or managed to obtain the elemental potion. Felix, who had the same element, knew all of this as well. Hence, his reason why he never bothered to enhance his illusion affinity. After all, why would he do so, when the only bloodlines that were in the market were absolute trash? Felix would be a fool if he ever thought of replacing the J. Rumungandr bloodline with such garbage bloodlines. That being said, the ethereal sorrow fiend bloodline truly had some wicked abilities. Such as, the one that Spirit Visage was currently using to hide his party from Felix's eyesight. Eyesight perception blockage. Felix mumbled the name softly. When he failed to see Solar Mist's party and the upcoming attack, while Asna was able to easily, he quickly figured out what happened to him. He knew that this ability made his eyes unable to see anything except for the background. In other words, Solar Mist's party could throw any ability they wanted without worrying about Felix seeing it and defending against it. The perfect ability for ambushing. Still, like any other ability, there was always a type of limitation and weakness to balance it out. Felix knew exactly what to do in order to get himself out of its effect. "Hey guys! It's great to see you again." Felix suddenly stood up with his hands inside of his pockets and said sarcastically, "I never thought your greeting would be in such a welcoming fashion. Solar, Mr. Muscle, Mr. Spirit." He said each name while staring right through their eyes, making them flinch. They couldn't help but start to assume that he was actually able to see them. If not else, how did he dodge their first ambush, and now he was even staring right in their eyes? Solar Mist gave a quick glance to Spirit Visage, who was hovering above him in an ethereal form. Spirit Visage understood the meaning of his glance and showed him a shoulder shrug, clearly implying that he also had no idea what was happening. He was certain that his ability had taken effect. He was currently seeing with his own eyes that Felix was inside his ability's 20 meters radius domain. Hence, he was also as confused as Solar Mist. Irritated, Solar Mist stopped bothering with the useless Spirit Visage and began to ponder whether to reply back to Felix or not. He felt that it was a trap laid by Felix. Since, the moment he spoke a single word out loud, the illusion would be broken, exposing everyone inside. He wasn't a moron to fall for such a low-level trick. "What's the problem, Solar?" Felix leaned on the chest in a carefree manner and taunted, "Did you finally learn how to keep your feisty personality in check?" He suddenly laughed jokingly, "I never assumed that you would actually take my previous words to heart. What a good boy you are." Felix beseeched him with his hand, "Come near, boy, let me reward you with a head pat. That must be the reason you came here after all. Right? Landlord's mouth is literally made out of poison." Zoe laughed out loud at the ugly face of Solar Mist, who looked like he was holding a dump for 3 days straight. The spectators were also enjoying Felix's brutal insults. Yet, they still didn't think that Felix was actually going to get out of here alive. What a joke! They knew that Felix was merely talking big to scare them off as a last attempt at survival. Unlike Solar Mist's party, who had no idea the amount of Felix's energy, they were pretty certain that Felix's energy tank wasn't even 10% filled. Plus, with his shoulder wound that would still hinder him during the fight, there was just no way that he could survive their onslaught. Breath, breath, breath. Solar Mist kept repeating this in his mind while taking a deep breath through his nose and exhaling through his mouth. He was trying his very best to calm himself down and not ruin his team's plans. He just needed to ignore Felix's taunts and his death would be stamped upon. "I bet you will make great friends with Hound Stench's dog." Felix pointed at his crotch and asked, "How you met him?" "He lives right here." He paused and pointed at his stomach this time. "Oh wait, maybe it was here." He scratched his head and apologized, "I am sorry for the audience for having to see that, my memory always fails me." He sighed, "If I drunk photographic memory potion as Mr. Solar did, I wouldn't have had such a problem. Too bad, not all of us are as pretty as Solar Mist to have it gifted to us by a sugar mommy." He shrugged his shoulders and asked warmly, "Don't you agree, Mr. Soul? Landlord, I will King murder you." Before Felix could even finish his question, he heard Solar Mist's bestial roar coming from in front of him. He blinked his eyes once and the sight before him was completely different. He saw exactly what Asuna narrated before. The only difference was that Solar Mist's body and the area around him were set in flame, while Pure Muscle for some reason started to laugh his ass out while pointing his finger at Solar Mist. He was probably laughing at Solar Mist dropping the ball in such a critical moment. But who could blame Solar Mist's reaction? Felix's words crossed the line and went beyond it. Especially when he called his dear wife his sugar mommy. Not a single decent man would have his wife being insulted under public eyes and remain calm. Felix did it before during the game hall, and now he repeated it again. This time, he truly went overboard. Felix didn't give jack shit about Solar Mist's feelings. Why would he? The F***er brought an army with him to take him down. So, Felix wasn't going to mince his words in the slightest. He would say whatever needed to get him out of this death trap. Displeased, Spirit Visage looked at his illusion domain that was in the process of falling apart, exposing everyone that was within it. Even him, who was in an ethereal form. He didn't think that a few insults and barks were enough to turn Solar Mist into a man-made flame, literally. However, if he had a wife or at least a girlfriend, he would have understood Solar Mist's fury. Too bad, he didn't even have normal human emotions, don't even mention having a woman. Such a childish reaction. Spirit Visage shook his head while watching from above Solar Mist suddenly starting to wave his hand sideways, sending in each wave a golden crow made of fire. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sound of wind could be heard as Felix, narrowly dodging the salvo of crows that were thrown at him. His ears hearing nothing but his heart beating wildly. He never expected that Solar Mist's reaction would be so fast and brutal, not letting him even take cover behind the chest first. Before he could even sigh in relief, he suddenly saw Solar Mist give him a cold smile as he bent his index fingers in his direction. Whoosh! Whoosh! The flame crows that Felix had just dodged made an abrupt sharp turn, coming back to assault him this time from behind. Felix didn't even need to see them as the sound of their wings flapping was enough to let him know that his back was totally exposed. The eyes of the spectators widened in anticipation of how was Felix going to handle Solar Mist's way of controlling those crows like homing missiles. Thud! Boom! Boom! Unexpectedly, Felix didn't even turn his head before kicking the lid of the chest wide open, using it as an extra shield against the crows. His play worked just like a charm, as Solar Mist wasn't able to make them dodge the lid of the chest in time before colliding with it. Felix timed his kicks so well, some spectators began to wonder if he had eyes in the back of his head. Shit! Shit! I need to make run for it. Unbeknownst to them, Felix was about to shit himself from fright. He literally just kicked the lid of the chest out of reflex. He never expected it would work so well. However, he knew that it was just a one-time thing that couldn't be repeated anymore. The thought of using the chest as a cover was dashed from his mind immediately after realizing that Solar Mist's Crows of Flame was a controllable ability. He wasn't stupid to let himself be a sitting duck behind the chest. You guys asked for it. Felix shouted at the top of his voice, Mist of the Dead. Consume my enemies' souls to oblivion. Clap! Felix smacked his palms together in a dramatic manner, forcing out a whitish mist out of his pores gradually. The mist kept spreading meter by meter under Felix's deranged laughs. Your greatest mistake was staying so close to me. Now die. Before the mist reached 7 meters, the goons behind Solar Mists made a run for it with frightened expressions. Felix's 3 fireworks truly made them traumatized. If Felix said that his mist could kill by a single touch, they would believe it in a heartbeat. Meanwhile, Pure Muscle's guts didn't warn him in the slightest that the approaching mist was dangerous. However, he still took a few steps back as a precaution. The only ones who didn't move from their position were Solar Mist and Spirit Visage. One believed that his fire was able to evaporate the mist, thus protecting him. The other was in an ethereal form. Not a single substance affected him in this form. TSK. Felix clicked his tongue in irritation at the sight of those two not affected in the slightest by his aura. He wanted to scare them into retreating by his using their lack of information about his aura, but the bastards didn't move even an inch. "Geo, kill them all!" Felix's maddened shout resounded one last time before his aura finally reached the 8 meters mark. Pure Muscle didn't care anymore about his gut feeling. He fist-pumped his palm while holding his breath. Zoe knew what he planned on doing, and honestly, she wanted nothing more but to laugh her ass out. Pure Muscle actually activated one of his famous defensive abilities, Derman Armor, because of Felix's hollow boast. Gray rocks started to materialize on his tan skin, covering every inch of his body. Even his face was completely hidden. If his eyes weren't still in the open, any stranger who saw him would believe that he was a statue made of rocks. His transformation didn't take even a second. However, that second was enough for Solar Mist and Spirit Visage to realize that the mist stopped spreading at 8 meters sharp. To actually ambush me, while knowing that I slew a legendary beast solo. I don't know whether to applaud for your bravery or laugh at your stupidity, Felix said in an arrogant manner. Alas, if he wasn't escaping while saying so, his words might have sounded a bit dashing in the ears of the spectators. Yet now, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the sight of him bolting away while hidden inside the white mist. Spirit Visage was the first to notice from above that the spherical white mist that blocked their vision was actually retreating instead of advancing as Felix claimed. He immediately knew that the prick was all barks and no bait. Chase him down! He doesn't have enough energy to fight. Spirit Visage flew rapidly after Felix while continuously giving off orders, just gang up on him. He does not pose a threat. Don't order me around. Don't order me around. Livid, both Solar Mist and Pure Muscle yelled at the same time while running after Felix. They glared at each other for a couple of seconds and switched their focus on Felix, who was exposed in the open after he withdrew his aura. They knew that Spirit Visage was right. Felix was totally spent during his many fights before. He was easier to kill than a random player now. A bloodliner without energy was the same as a tiger without claws or fangs. Whoosh! Whoosh! Solar Mist kept firing those flaming crows at Felix's back. Yet, the moment they reached 20 meters away from him, they disappear. His ability had a limited range, and now it was giving him trouble. He bit his lower lip and increased his speed slightly, trying to lower the distance to 15 meters. That was the optimal distance to manipulate his crows to their best potential. However, Felix wasn't making it any easier for him. His elemental energy might have been spent, but his physical energy was at its peak form. After all, he took a 45 minutes long break, while Solar Mist's party was probably running from the maze exit non-stop to reach him as fast as possible. Seeing that Felix was actually putting more and more distance between them, his fans started to believe that he might actually escape. Make yourself useful and do something, Solar Mist said, glaring at Pure Muscle, who was behind him, struggling to catch up with his heavy transformation. F*CK off. Too bad, the only response he received was a rocky middle finger. Tisk, useless trash. Why did we even add you to our alliance? Solar Mist sneered and turned his head, not bothering himself with Pure Muscle. In his eyes, it was only him and Spirit Visage at this point. Even the slaves he brought with him turned out beyond useless. To actually escape the moment they got threatened by Felix, he honestly would have snapped their necks if he didn't have more important matters to handle. Watch closely how things get done so you won't drop the ball again. Pure Muscle narrowed his eyes while pointing his rocky finger at Felix's back. Dermal armor transfer technique, he called out loud. Suddenly, the rocky armor that was protecting him started to detach itself from his body. His hairy, musclier body was exposed to the open again. Yet, the weirder part was that the armor flew immediately towards Felix after separation. Whoosh! When Felix heard a different sound of the wind, he turned his head, wanting to peek at what attack Solar Mist this time used on him. What the F***ck? He instantly cursed after seeing arms, legs, torso, and even the helmet all made of gray rocks, targeting him like a homing missile. He never heard of such a bullshit ability before. He never expected that a defensive ability would be used as an offensive ability. Well, if knew that it was actually a technique, it would have made more sense. Now, he could only increase his speed while zigzagging through the paths, hoping to shake them off. However, every time he turned around, his heartbeats increase a notch after seeing them inching closer and closer to his body. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click #2in1_493307446270999189 for visiting. Asna, any ideas? He asked with an urgent tone. Nope. As always, Asna didn't take a single second before shutting him down with a hard no. Discover W stories on no/e/lbin.com. However, this time her eyes were a bit gloomy. Was it because of his dire situation or something else? No one knows. Zoe and the spectator's eyes kept getting wider and wider at the sight of Felix running desperately while having that armor merely a few meters behind him. Click! F***ck my life. He actually stepped on a trap. Zoe brought the mic closer to her lips and yelled, how could he be so unlucky? She wasn't lying in the slightest, as Felix took the wrong step, opening up a wide hole in the floor right in front of him. The trap had sharp metallic spikes, resembling shark teeth at the bottom of the hole. Scared shitless, Felix jumped immediately after reaching the end of the hole. With his speed, there was absolutely no way that he could have stopped in time. It was better to risk it with a jump, hoping to reach the other side safely. Alas, that didn't happen. The moment Felix reached the middle of the hole, gravity began to do its wonders, grabbing him by his ankle and pulling him down. F***CKU gravity. Solar Mist's eyes brightened up like New Year's Eve fireworks at Felix falling down with his legs and hands flailing randomly. Yet, what delighted him the most was Felix's screams. Zoe and the spectators all had their hands clutched above their heads, not daring to believe that Felix, after everything he had been through in the game, was actually going to die in such an anticlimactic manner. Cluck! 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 What in the God's name am I even watching? Gobsmacked, Zoe cried out loud at the sight of Felix getting covered by the dermal armor while falling midair towards the sharp spikes in the hole. She wasn't the only one dumbfounded by the sight, as the spectators, Solar Mist and especially Pure Muscle all had their mouths agape as well. Smash! Felix, who appeared like a giant statue made of rocks, slammed into the sharp spikes, sending metallic sparks all over the place. Yet, nothing much happened except for that. His body didn't get a single wound or even a scratch by those spikes. He was completely fine, which baffled him and Asna more than it did to the spectators. Felix, did you bribe that bushy gorilla in the game hall? Or is he your long-lost brother? Asna asked in bewilderment. F***ck off, don't associate me with that gorilla. Felix lifted his heavy hand with cold sweat on his back. That was truly a close shave. He totally forgot about the traps laying everywhere. Before, he was relying too much on his infrared vision to spot those traps and avoid them. But now, he was running full commando without it. It was natural that he would activate a trap sooner or later. He just never expected that he would actually get saved by an ability thrown at him to kill him. Wait, why did it give me an armor instead of smashing into me? He thought to himself. When he was being chased by it, he assumed that it was an offensive ability, meant to deal damage to him. Yet, instead, it gave him a dermal armor. What's the F*** point? This question was on everyone's mind actually, and not just Felix. Especially Solar Mist, who was about to lose his shit at such a twist. Who could blame him though? Felix was 99% dead, or at least going to get heavily wounded from the fall. But now he was standing on the tips of the spikes like he was standing on solid ground. Forget about saving him from the fall, the armor even gave him extra assistance to get out of the hole. Before he could even insult the somewhat embarrassed Pure Muscle, he saw Felix jump like a rocket from the hole and land on its other side. "Thank you for the armor, Mr. Muscle." Felix waved his hand in a playful manner and said, "I will wire you the agreed amount after the game. Till then. Bye-bye." Felix turned around and continued his escape with almost the same speed, like the heavy weight of the armor wasn't troubling him at all. Pure Muscle's eyebrows twitched at such a sight. It was obvious he planned to use this technique to capture Felix or at least slow him down. Yet, it backfired on his face in public view. Solar Mist removed his glasses and tightened his grip until they broke. Yet, his murderous eyes never left Felix's back. Immediately after he saw that Felix was gone, he gave Pure Muscle a dirty glance and snapped his finger. He didn't have time to deal with Pure Muscle's screw-up. Spirit Visage never stopped chasing after Felix, and Solar Mist wasn't going to let himself be left behind with this buffoon. Teaching him how to not drop the ball? Solar Mist scoffed at what Pure Muscle said before. He messed up way harder than anyone ever could. Phew! A carpet made of flame was created under his feet and starting to unroll itself until it reached the other side of the hole. If it wasn't a wide hole covering the entire path, he could have just went around it. Sadly, he could only use his fire carpet ability to help him out. Immediately after stepping on the fire carpet, his feet brighter up with a red halo, entailing the automatic activation of his passive ability Fire Marsh. Try to catch up, morons. He gave them one last unfriendly glance and sprinted on the fire carpet, reaching the other side of the hole in a jiffy. Phew! Without slowing down his speed, he snapped his finger and the fire carpet disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Pure Muscle stared at his back with a vicious glint. He actually just got insulted in the same breath as those weaklings behind him. He would rather prefer getting insulted alone than being treated like this. "Come here, let me help you bypass the trap." The vicious look he had was replaced with an indifferent one as he ordered them. Frightened, the players, instead of approaching him, took a step back. Their gut feeling was warning them to do the exact opposite. Yet, it honestly didn't even matter if they took a step back or 100. One cold look from Pure Muscle made them approach him obediently. They hated the feeling of having their lives under others, but what could they do? If they disagreed with his wishes, he could easily ask the Queen to pop off their brain on the basis that the contract conditions were broken. "You first!" Pure Muscle gripped the head of one of the players, making him yelp in pain and fright. Suddenly, under the eyes of the spectators, he hurled the player in the air by his head, like a cannonball. Thud! Crack! His body smashed right into the cold metallic floor and rolled at least 6 times like a broken doll before stopping. The sound of his bones breaking was still resounding in the ears of the mortified other player before his head got clutched as well by Pure Muscle's steel grip. "Don't worry, Mr. Bloodish Eyes, your landing won't be as nasty as him." Pure Muscle showed him a sadistic grin and said, "After all, I just had practice." "Put me down, you demo." Before Bloodish Eyes finished saying his piece, he got thrown in the air as well. Thud. Arg! Pure Muscle wasn't lying to him as he landed straight on the motionless body of the first player. That softened the landing a bit for him. Not bad, Pure Muscle said, smiling. His anger was completely vented on those two poor souls. Dermal armor, Pure Muscle called out loud while jumping above the hole. His body, just like before, started to be covered in gray stones. Thud. He landed on his feet and sprinted on the CLU.S.tiered sharp spikes before jumping out of the hole again, reaching the other side. Without delaying any further, he pulled the conscious player by his collar and chased after the rest. His rocky hand gripped the poor lad so tight, his neck had veins protruding from it. L-E-T-M-E-G-O. Breathless, the player said letter by letter while tapping his hand in surrender on Pure Muscle's forearm. Oh! Pure Muscle immediately dropped him after realizing that he was choking him. You better make yourself useful then. He gave him a threatening look and continued his chase with a befuddled expression. He didn't want to admit it, but he totally lost them. The moment they got out of his sight, there was no way he would be able to spot them inside this maze without assistance. His abilities weren't really that helpful when it came to tracking others. Sir, you are heading the wrong way, Bloodish Eyes murmured softly behind Pure Muscle. He didn't have the guts to laugh at him for it. Oh. You know how to find them? Pure Muscle suddenly stopped and ordered, Don't answer that, just lead the way. Bloodish Eyes didn't even get the chance to brag about his tracking ability before he got shut down by Pure Muscle. Yes, sir. With slumped shoulders, the player changed direction and sprinted with his head lowered. Pure Muscle thought that he was upset. But in reality, the player was actually following red bright footsteps that only he could see by using his active ability Predator Hunt. Damn it, that gorilla took my armor away. Irritated, Flix cursed in his mind while looking behind his back. Immediately after, his eyes made contact with Solar Mist's murderous eyes. The prick was approaching him rapidly, as he kept surfing on a carpet made of flame. He wasn't walking or sprinting, but literally surfing on fire, like he was riding an ocean wave. The carpet was continuously expanding in front and withdrawing from behind, keeping always of 5-meter size. Felix knew for sure that was a technique combined from 2 abilities or probably even 3 at once. There was no way in hell that Flame Carpet was able to do that by itself. Plus, the fact that Solar Mist started using it just now, instead of before, made it even obvious that it was a technique. After all, techniques consumed energy like drinking water. If it wasn't for so, Bloodliners would start using only them in fights and not save them up as a final deadly trump card. Whoosh! Boom! Arg! Felix couldn't but groan in pain after a flaming crow exploded right behind his back. It wasn't a direct attack, but the explosion managed to leave some red scorched marks on his back. His hoodie was completely torn apart. This was the 4th crow that was sent in his direction. The first ones didn't harm him at all since he had the dermal armor protecting him. However, now that it was gone, he was completely exposed to Solar Mist's full assaults without any way to retaliate. His energy was enough to let him throw only 3 bombs before fainting. There was no way in hell he would put himself in that position. In addition, Spirit Visage was still following above him. He knew that he was merely waiting for him to stop for a couple of seconds to put down his illusion domains again. Thus, he couldn't stop or turn to fight Solar Mist. His situation was getting direr and direr. He knew it, the spectators knew it, Zoe knew it, and even Spirit Visage and Solar Mist knew it. At this point, his only hope was to continue running until the game ends. Whoosh! Boom! Landlord needs a miracle to survive. Hopeless, Zoe shook her head at the sight of Felix staggering forward few steps after his back was engulfed in flames of the explosion. The spectators shared the same view as her. Even Felix's fans began to lose faith and hope that he could turn this around. They knew if Felix had enough energy, he would have destroyed those two by now. Sadly, that was a big if. Felix thought of the time he spent a hefty amount of energy to deal with the terror serpent, and regrets started to wash over him like a tide. If only he gave up on the terror serpent and aimed straight for the legendary chest, he wouldn't be in such a dire position. Alas, Felix wasn't a prophet. He had no idea that he would be found out by an alliance made of the strongest players in the game after him. He assumed before that at most he would end up meeting with one. If that actually happened, 5% energy or 1% energy, he was confident in fighting his way through by relying only on his super strength passive. If that didn't work, he still could escape successfully. Unfortunately, Spirit Visage and Solar Mists truly complemented their abilities well. One attacks and the other imposed everlasting pressure on him, not letting him even stop to catch his breath. Boom! The sound of the explosion was heard loud and clear in Felix's ears, as one crow exploded exactly 1 meter away from his head. His ears were ringing and bleeding, but his expression remained stoic. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click #494021720807044621 for visiting. His burnt back was pricking him with waves of pain. Yet, Felix merely gritted his teeth and carried on running at his top speed. In his eyes, this pain compared to the torture he felt during his integrations phases wouldn't even serve an appetizer. If they wanted to kill him, they need to step up their game. Discover new chapters at novelby.co. What the hell is he made of? Fall already. Fall. Solar Mist expression kept getting uglier and uglier. His energy was getting dried up rapidly, yet his attacks, even with direct contacts, still weren't enough to finish the job. He just wanted to make him drop on his feet and Spirit Visage would carry on from there on. Mr. Luke, Spirit Visage said that you need to capture him in the next 500 meters. His ethereal form can't go beyond it. If you failed, he will be forced to return to his main body. The Queen's voice was suddenly heard in Solar Mist's mind. Without a hint of surprise, he glanced at Spirit Visage, who was giving him a forced mild smile. He knew that his partner wasn't messing around with him. In his mind, it was normal that his ethereal form had an activity range. After all, in that form, he was untouched, unaffected by any elemental abilities, and still could activate his abilities freely. Such a good ability had to have some limitations. He just didn't know its limitation would start knocking so soon. Well, he believed that it was soon, but actually, they were running for about 6 minutes now. Heck, the distance between them and the golden chest already reached 2 kilometers. Felix sure brought them on a journey without their realization. King hell, if even Spirit Visage left, how am I supposed to deal with this unkillable C.O.C. Croach? Livid, Solar Mist bit his lips hard, almost causing it to bleed. Shit! I can only use that technique now. But is it really worth it? Solar Mist began to hesitate about his decision. Who could blame him? The technique he was planning on using was going to drain every drop of energy he had. He would be left N.A.K.E.D in the open to anyone's aggression. He felt that Spirit Visage wouldn't hesitate for even a second to kill him after he finished slaying Felix. Ultimately, their alliance contract would be nullified the moment Felix dies. This meant his death would follow immediately after Felix. Solar Mist might be furious and humiliated by Felix's way of insulting his dear wife. Still, it didn't mean he would sacrifice his life to regain his face and her honor back. Queen, please deliver this mind message and contract to Spirit Visage. Solar Mist stopped his throwing his useless crows and focused on dealing with the aftermath of using his second technique. He might not want to bet his life on this chase. But still, if the solution that he was going to propose to Spirit Visage works, he wouldn't mind continuing the hunt. Mr. Spirit, I believe I have a way to make sure that landlord either dies or gets heavily wounded. However, I need you to sign this protection contract. It entails that you must ensure my safety at all costs, whether landlord dies or not. I believe that Pure Muscle is still chasing after us. He wouldn't hesitate to kill me if he saw me in a weak state without the Alliance contract protection. You have 3 seconds to give me your approval. If you said no, I will give up on this chase. The Queen delivered the message word by word straight into the mind of Spirit Visage. In addition, she showed him the contract while saying the message. Everything was neat and efficient. Spirit Visage didn't read the contract since the massage itself was the contract. The only addition was that in case he failed to protect Solar Mist from dying, his consciousness would be destroyed by the Queen. Without further ado, he gave a faint smile in direction of Solar Mist and signed the contract. He wasn't dumb or anything to not realize that Solar Mist was actually afraid of him acting up and not that buffoon. Regardless, he still signed it. He was too committed in this chase to give up so easily. The contract has been signed successfully, Sir Luke. The Queen informed Solar Mist. A bit excited, Solar Mist gave his thanks to the Queen while eyeing Felix's scorched back like an eagle eyeing a rabbit. I dare you to not fall after eating this. He grinned and snapped both of his fingers. Suddenly his body was engulfed in orange flames. Then, crows kept being formed constantly from every part of his body. Yet, instead of flying towards Felix like before, they kept flying around Solar Mist, waiting for his orders. The spectators stood up from their seats with expectations written all over their faces. They felt that Solar Mist's upcoming attack was going to seal the deal, and finally get rid of that jerk. Meanwhile, Felix's fans folded their hands while muttering prayers and wishes. Anything that could get Felix out of his dire situation was used. Read lat stchpters on n/v/l/b/i.cm. 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. Zoe kept counting the number of crows that were being added around Solar Mist. They didn't stop adding until the total count reached whopping 50 crows. If Solar Mist wasn't a peak stage 1 bloodliner, his energy would have never managed to sustain such a large amount, despite the fact his tank wasn't even 30% full. One should never forget that bloodliners receive a small enhancement to their energy tank each time they integrated 15%, and a large enhancement each time they replaced a bloodline. This meant Solar Mist's energy tank was 2 times or so bigger than Felix's. Oh, Felix, it seems like the prick is preparing a quite big attack. Asna said. No shit. I can see it as well. Felix snapped at her with a grim voice. He turned his head back and focused on the path ahead of him. He didn't know what Solar Mist was preparing for him, but seeing that amount of crows all at once only meant that he was in deep shit. You don't have to yell at me. She coiled a stalk of hair in her finger and suddenly murmured, I was just going to ask if you need my help. Huh. Startled by her unexpected offer, Felix almost tripped himself on the ground. Not in a lifetime would he have expected Asna to actually offer assistance by herself. This was Asna. Goddamn Asna, who said nope each time he asked her for help or an opinion. Asna, who only agrees to his wishes if he offered her something in return. She was the perfect specimen of a lazy individual who seeks only her interest. Yet, she actually offered her help in such a critical moment. He didn't know if he should feel glad or mad at her staying silent till this point in time. Be quick! What can you do? Felix didn't have time to feel neither. A single glance at solar mist showed him that the crows were fusing together above his head, shaping up into a huge sphere. Crow after crow kept dashing inside the sphere, making it even bigger and bigger. I can infuse the pure energy I had been saving into your real body. However, instead of using it to enhance your affinity, you can use it to activate your abilities. She informed him with her chin raised and a smug smile on her face. If he saw the way she looked, he would honestly bash her face with his elbow, uncaring about her beauty anymore. Here he was struggling to survive, yet she was enjoying flaunting her ability. Do it fast. He is about to attack. Felix wasn't kidding around, as solar mist's crows finally finished fusing together, creating a humongous fire sphere that resembled a real sun with its orange tongues and waves being released above his head. Felix was honestly beyond terrified by the sun. He knew if that landed on him, there was no way that he would remain the same after. A few missing limbs and scorned black skin were guaranteed outcomes. That was only due to his strong physical defenses. If he didn't have super strength passive, dying wasn't a far-fetched reality. Mr. Landlord, this sun is a gift from my wife. Solar Mist gave a frigid smile and said, next time, know how to respect others' spouses. Whoosh! Supernova technique. Turn him into ash. He shouted out loud as he hurled the sun in Felix's direction. It was so massive that Felix's eyes were almost blinded when he lifted his head and saw it descending from above. Esnea! He screamed in his mind while bolting with cold sweat on his red-scorched back. He was trying his best to leave as much distance as possible from it. If the distance between him and Solar Mist was as close as before, he would have been struck by now. Fortunately for him, the distance widened by at least 40 meters or so after Solar Mist removed his carpet surfing technique in order to add more crows into the sun. His energy wasn't enough to sustain both of them active at once. Stop whining. I already transferred the energy to your real body. She said in annoyance. Why can't I feel any tea? Felix wasn't able to finish his sentence as a sudden bright scorching light assaulted his eyes. He was looking ahead of him the entire time, yet the light of the explosion still managed to reach his eyes. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience. Please click hashtag #TIFeelAnything_494464165309737 for visiting. Was I engulfed by the sun? He thought to himself. Boom! A split second after, the sound of the explosion reached his already bloodied ears. His eyes were blinded, his ears were deafened, his skin was burnt, his face was ruined. Even the hellish pain he was expecting didn't reach him. All of his senses were completely destroyed. He felt absolutely nothing. Why can't I feel anything? He asked in total darkness. Same question, yet different meaning. A sudden terrifying silence descended in the stadium. Neither Zoe nor the spectators spoke. Even the stream viewers who were either in their homes, watching from TV, or outside watching from their AP bracelet, went super quiet. They were just staring with stunned expressions at what remained of Felix's body 120 meters away from the explosion area. Indeed, the remainings of his blackened body. He was left with only one leg that was on the verge of detaching itself like his other limbs. Arms were gone, a leg was gone, his clothes and skin were utterly burnt off, leaving him lying silently near a wall akin to a piece of black charcoal. Even when his facial visage was burnt off, the darkness remained covering his upper facial half. Not that it mattered at this moment. No one spoke or even took a breath in since the moment of the explosion. Their minds kept playing exactly what they saw. The sun exploding 2 meters or so behind Felix. The bright light of the explosion that followed after blocked them from seeing exactly what happened at that point. However, they managed to spot Felix's torn scorched arms, leg, and what remained from him, hurled in the air each in a different direction. That sight was enough to let them know that it wasn't pretty. What just happened? Please someone tell me what just happened. A member of Felix's club kept mumbling to himself with an absent-minded expression. Unfortunately, no one responded or entertained his question. Till this point, they still didn't dare to believe that Felix, the player who dominated this game single-handedly by his overwhelming achievements, died eventually. The majority of the spectators wanted him dead badly. God knows how many times they wished for it to happen due to his jerk personality. But now, seeing his body in such a messed up shape, feelings of regret and discomfort started to arise within their hearts. They realized that he might have been too nonchalant to their wishes, but he still fought and risked his life solo in every damn battle he went through. He neither joined partners.I.P.S. nor alliances. He was merciless, brutal, brave, and always going solo. When they compared him to the rest of the players, like Solar Mist, Pure Muscle, and even Spirit Visage, a sudden realization hit them. He never chickened out from a beast he met as they did. Whether he was against an epic or a legendary beast. A newbie on his second game was more daring than hardcore players, who played at least 10 games or more. That realization made them understand that Felix's death was a tragedy. A tragedy that shouldn't have happened. Daring players like him were few and between. They knew that his future games were going to be as spectacular as this one. Unfortunately, the sight of his motionless corpse brought them to reality. He was a goner. No one was hit the hardest by the sight than Marcus, Felix's true #1 fan. His hands, which never stopped typing since the moment he entered the stadium, finally froze on the hologram. He simply kept staring at Felix's corpse with a blank look on his face. As for leader Emma, her eyes were still closed shut. She didn't see what happened, but she heard the explosion loud and clear. The following creepy silence, like she was at a funeral, was enough to tell her that her worst wish came true. A tear was rolling down her cheek, reaching her chin. She cried not because of Felix's death only, but due to the image of her club shutting down immediately after this game. 2 months of effort went down the drain. Near the area of the explosion, the atmosphere was completely different. It was joyful and bright. Ha ha ha, cough, ha ha, cough. Overjoyed and exhausted, Solar Mist kept laughing and coughing at the same time with his body spread on the floor. He was lying on his stomach with his chin lifted and sleazy delighted eyes. He felt like he was on top of the world at the sight of Felix's blackened corpse. He wasn't able to see it clearly due to the distance and tiredness, but a scorched arm near the wall to his right let him understand Felix's fate. He used everything he had on his final attack, and it was goddamn worth it. Although he was weaker than a thin branch at the moment, he still felt glad that he regained his face and his wife's honor. He didn't care anymore about winning the bet or the game. The instant Felix insulted his wife for the second time, this battle was personal. Suddenly, his eyes were closing in by themselves. He knew that he couldn't resist the tiredness of his body anymore. However, before fainting for good, he still had an unfinished business. Mr. Siracle, Solar Mist told you to keep your promise and ensure his safety. Spirit Visage, who was checking Felix's corpse up close, abruptly received a message from the Queen. Indifferent as always, he lifted his head and gazed at Solar Mist, who was trying his best to hold for a few seconds until he received a positive response. Tell him that he will be alright, Whoosh! Before Spirit Visage could even finish, his vision was totally blacked out. He couldn't see even his hands. Yet, he felt nothing since he was still in his ethereal form. He rose in the air until his vision got restored. He looked down and saw a pitch-black sphere revolving around Felix's corpse. The sphere quite resembled the white aura he saw before. But he noticed a small difference. This sphere was revolving continuously around the center like a storm. Add some lightning and a living thunderstorm would be born. He knew that something wasn't right. What's going on? Startled, Zoe pointed her finger at the black sphere and asked, was that ability by Spirit Visage? Is he planning on completely obliterating Landlord's corpse? Boo! Leave him, you sick F***ck. What a heartless monster. They truly weren't lying when they said he was an emotionless piece of block. The spectators didn't know what was happening as well, but the comment by Zoe was enough to send them into an angry tirade. They couldn't accept the fact that Felix's corpse was also not getting a break. Wasn't ganging up on him enough to satisfy him? Now he was even planning to bully a corpse instead of going after Princess Bird or do what the hell he had in mind to win the bet. Why? They questioned in the minds. They understood that killing Felix was a personal matter for Solar Mist. But for Spirit Visage? Their memories failed to show them the reason for his hate. If he could even feel such an emotion. Wait a second, it seems like he also had no idea what was going on. Zoe interrupted their booing by enlarging the camera on Spirit Visage's face, which was showing his eyebrows slightly frowned while looking at the dark sphere. The spectators paused their rant gradually, as they noticed as well that his expression was entailing his unawareness of the situation. However, accepting that he had nothing to do with the dark sphere made it even harder for them to fathom what was going on. A sudden mind-blowing thought took root in their minds and refused to leave. A thought that was beyond impossible and on the border of fantasy. Was Landlord still alive? They switched their vision from Spirit Vision to the dark sphere, which didn't stop revolving around itself for even a split second. Those with omnipotent vision didn't wait until Zoe exposed what was hidden inside the sphere on the large screen. They decided to explore for themselves what was truly going on. Oh my God! Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Landlord is not dead. That sudden shocked female scream was like a fuse that lights up a tent packed with 100 kilograms TNT. As each spectator, who used their omnipotent vision, exploded with shouts and screams at the top of their voices. He is alive! At the moment of the explosion. Why can't I feel anything? Felix asked in total darkness, surrendering him. He felt like he was merely a thought floating in a void-like space. Get a grip, you retard! Your consciousness is on the verge of collapse. Asna shouted while hiding under the bed with her hands above her head like a scared kitten. She was more annoyed than scared about the earthquake that suddenly assaulted her mansion after Felix was hit by that supernova technique. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience. Please click #._49450384162347970 for visiting. I swear if my mansion was destroyed, I will make your life hell for the next month. No sleep. No sex with Nora. And most importantly, I will whine 24/7. She threw every threat she could think of with a worried look. No one knows if she was actually worried about Felix's unresponsive reaction or about her mansion falling apart. King Hell, can't you wake me up without insults and threats? Felix's sudden irked roar resonated around the consciousness lake. If you think I will weep for you or promise you an unforgettable night, you really must check if your brain was damaged. She scoffed while crawling from underneath the bed. She didn't want him to see the human-like reaction she picked from the dramas she watched. Heck, any vibration in a drama makes the female lead hid underneath something. This led her to subconsciously forget herself and imitate what she saw. TSK, your brain is the one that needs medical attention. To actually get scared from an earthquake. He sarcastically asked, are you really part of the superior races? *CK off. Immediately after she stood up, she pointed both her middle fingers in the air. She couldn't believe that she actually felt a bit worried about this hateful tumor that was living with her. Nothing nice comes out of his mouth, like ever. Haha, your pissed-off look is always pleasing to look at. Before she even responded to his iffy compliment, she heard him ask, "How much energy did you give me exactly?" "All of it." She humped in displeasure. She was probably regretting her decision of giving it all. "Oh. Does that mean my energy tank is full again?" Surprised and elated, he asked her. "Full?" She tucked a strand behind her ear in a lax manner, uncaring anymore about the collapsing mansion around her. She just gave a C.O.C.KY smile and informed him, "Your tank is filled with the purest elemental energy in the universe. This energy is at least 5 times more potent than what you were filling your tank with before. So yes, it is 100%. She stared at the collapsing ceiling of the mansion with a smirk and said, "But in reality, you actually have 500% all at once." Ha ha ha. Asna, I gotta say, suddenly you seem more beautiful and charming. Felix's elated laugh resounded in her ear. Yet, she totally ignored his delight and focused on what he said. "You ungrateful prick, I'm always beautiful. You hear me? Always!" she yelled. Sadly for her, Felix stopped responding the moment he received the answer he wanted to hear. He didn't want to use the 4th passive without knowing how much energy he had, since this ability depends indirectly on the amount. Now that he received a more than positive response, he immediately started treating himself. His consciousness was truly on the verge of collapse, and he must bring his body to shape again if he wanted to stop the collapse from getting any worse. Corruption aura activate. The moment he gave the order, the sudden pitch-black sphere that made everyone wonder about its origin was forced out of his burnt skin, spreading and engulfing anything in its path, even spirit visage. Poison revitalization. Felix soon followed with another order, activating this time the 4th passive he unlocked. This ability allowed him to revitalize his body based on the potency of the poison he absorbed. The higher the potency, the faster and remarkable the healing would be. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience. Please click #49469439053188563 for visiting. He never planned on using this passive in this game for 2 reasons. One, he was confident that not a single player could harm him that bad to make him use it. And, good job, gotta love a C.O.C.KYMC get put in his place. 2, he already showed 3 passives to the public. Super Strength, Poison Immunity, and finally Ultra Infrared Vision. Him using 4 passives would raise some red flags in everyone's heads. However, Felix wasn't bothered about it anymore, as he had in mind a way to bypass their suspicion. For now, his only focus was to treat his body back in form. The pitch-black sphere started to rush inside Felix's body in a rotating manner. Felix kept releasing his aura at the same time that his body was absorbing the released poison. This made the sphere to keep revolving constantly. "Ah, I am feeling again. I am feeling a guy. Ah, shit. I am feeling again." He screamed in his mind, feeling waves of pain assaulting every inch of his body. The slight itch he felt at the start transferred into full-blown torture. He totally forgot, or probably didn't know, that the reason he didn't feel pain during the explosion was that his nerve endings were thoroughly burnt off. He already surpassed the 3rd-degree burn and reached the 4th degree. After all layers of his skin, as well as his bones, muscles, and tendons were all affected. But now that his body was in the process of revitalizing, those nerve endings began to heal up earlier than his torn limbs and burnt flesh. The black mist kept entering his body and leaving yet again. Each time it happened, his black skin cracked, leaving long fissures on his body. Those fissures kept on growing longer and wider, spreading and connecting with each other until they no longer could. La test novls on, n, vel by slash, dot. Co. Crash, crash. Suddenly, pieces of the hardened black skin started to fall off one by one, exposing a smooth, unblemished pale skin underneath. Felix's face and chest were the first to be unveiled. His face was still in the process of reconstruction. On the other hand, his chest only had a few red scorched spots on it that were also getting removed rapidly. Throughout all of this, Felix's shrieks and Asna's long-lost sadistic laughs never stopped resounding for even a second. Only now did Felix realize how Wally truly was to actually voluntarily expose himself to getting burnt like this for over 2 hours or so. If before, he respected him, now his respect was increased tenfolds. Arg! Not the limbs. Yes. The limbs. New. Yes. Arg. Shut up. No. Asna kept making fun of him while laughing without a single ounce of sympathy. His screams were like melodies in her ears. Especially after all of his limbs started the revitalization process at the same time. His shrieks couldn't get any better. The leg that was still attached was the easiest to recover, while the other 3 started to regrow again from the bud. Dirty blood was expelled from the wounds before getting replaced with a new one. The regrowing process gave him an agony far surpassing what he experienced during his integration phases. Thankfully, it didn't take long before all of his limbs were back in shape again. After so, the black mist absorption speed slowed down gradually as the revitalizing process was almost over. The only bits left were scorched marks that were being rapidly treated as well. Tisk, that wasn't long at all. Displeased by how fast it all went, Asna clicked her tongue and lay on the bed again, getting into her favorite comfortable position. The consciousness stopped collapsing the moment Felix began treating himself up by using that passive. The revitalizing process didn't take even 10 seconds before Felix's body was back to peak form again, like he was never attacked during the entire game. It was this fast and effective only because Felix used one of his strongest merged inducement he created before, instead of using just one inducement. He called it corruption inducement, as it was created by a fusion of 20 inducements all at once. Swelling, headache, paralysis, decay, stiffness, motion sickness, rotting, molding, corrosion, and many more. Felix even threw in rotting and molding inducements that affected plant-based living beings and merged it with the rest to enhance the corruption. This combination gave birth to inducement that could affect the bloodliner mentality, physical movement, to finally finish it off with enhanced corrosion that could turn anyone into decayed black particles in a mere second by touch or whiff. There was absolutely no counter to this inducement. The moment one was exposed to it, he would certainly meet his doom. Felix wasn't able to use this combination or any combination he created in the training center due to his unreliable energy. He could only keep it active for only 6 seconds before he ran out of gas. Thus, he could only sign in disappointment and continue using one inducement by one. The primogenitor bloodline was strong all right, but he must be strong as well to be worthy of using to its full potential. His energy was always his first block. However, now that Asna provided him with energy that was 5 times more potent than he ever had, it wasn't a problem anymore to use it. At this point, he was raring to wield it on anyone or anything before his energy gives in again. His closed tight eyes started to unseal themselves gently. His eyelashes kept quivering as his eyelids opened up, exposing his violet irises and thin slits. The darkness mask hid them from the eyes of the spectators, who just used their omnipotent vision and saw him laying nude on the floor with fingers flinching from time to time. They didn't see his revitalizing process as it finished immediately after they snapped from their shock before. However, his clean-looking skin that had not a single scorched mark was enough to let them understand that Felix was anything but dead. How did he do it? They could only wait for the replay to find out. As for now, They just kept staring at him with bulging eyes, trying his best to stand up, not caring one bit about his exposed ass and censored genitals. They also weren't even paying attention to such an unsavory image, as their eyes were frozen on his face that had a slight smirk as he gazed above his head. They lifted their eyes and saw that he was gazing at Spirit Visage. Landlord is not DAAD. Their engrossment was broken by a sudden shocked female scream. Then? He is alive. Landlord is standing on his feet. Their shouts resounded in the stadium, making everyone who heard them question their mentality. However, after Zoe removed the pitch-black sphere that was hiding Felix, everyone was shocked silly by him standing fully nude while gazing at Spirit Visage. Landlord has risen from the dead without a single wound on his body. How did he do it? Thrilled and beyond excited, Zoe kept on yelling with her mouth so close to the mic, her lips were touching it. Yet, she wasn't even bothered, as the only thing that was in her focal point was Felix and only Felix. Electrified by Zoe's voice, Leader Emma and Marcus opened up their disbelieving eyes. They didn't dare to believe it. But, the sight of him stretching his joints like he just woke up from a 24-hour sleep was too real. He is back. They thought to themselves. Marcus immediately pressed on his AP bracelet and projected his note hologram again. He carried on typing from where he left with never-seen fervor. He was not wasting menting this glorious moment. Leader Emma made her move as well by sending messages in her club chat room, ordering everyone in the stadium to make as much noise as possible. Her club was not dead yet. Not now and not in the near future. Stop flaunting your pale ass, you retard. Wear something for God's sake. Asna covered her eyes with her hand, feeling burnt out by his antics. Oh, crap. Felix quickly snapped his finger, covering himself with the same outfit he had on before. Oversized black hoodie, sweatpants, and white sneakers. The moment he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Spirit Visage above his head, looking at him with the same expressionless face he always had. This made him absent-minded for a bit, as he was thinking about ways to deal with Spirit Visage's ethereal form in order to rip that indifferent expression from his face. Immediately after clothing himself, Felix withdrew his aura back, as it wasn't useful at this moment. He put one hand in his pocket while waving the other at Spirit Visage. Do you have anything else in your sleeves? He asked, smiling. I admit that whatever you used was totally unexpected. Spirit Visage smiled faintly and added, however, I simply activated my ultimate ability. Felix interrupted him in a nonchalant manner. He was clearly taking advantage of his question to explain what he used in order to avoid any unnecessary questions later on. He planned on making his revitalization passive appear as his unused ultimate ability. This would balance things out. 3 passives and 3 active abilities. As for the abilities he unlocks in the future, he had plans for them as well. No wonder Landlord didn't use his ultimate ability even when he almost died. Zoe hit the commentary table with her palm and exclaimed out loud, it was a type of rejuvenation ability. But stronger and instantaneous. To actually help him recover from a near-state death to peak form again in 10 seconds, there is no doubt that this ability is an ultimate one. Your bloodline is truly worthy of a legendary rank, Mr. Landlord. Spirit Visage complimented him with a polite smile. It seemed like he wasn't annoyed at being interrupted mid-sentence. I know. Felix cracked his knuckles while walking step by step back to the blast zone, where Solar Mist was lying unconscious. Leave my sight at this instant if you still value your life, he said with his back facing Spirit Visage. He honestly wanted to kill Spirit Visage as well, but he knew that as long as he was in that form, there was nothing he could do about it. He needed to find his real body and strike it if he wanted him dead. But how was he supposed to track him down? Especially now that only a couple of minutes were left before the game ends. I am afraid that I can't do that. Spirit Visage shook his head and flew rapidly towards Solar Mist's body. He couldn't leave even if he wanted, as the moment he signed the contract, his life was bound to Solar Mist's safety. If he failed to fulfill the conditions of the contract, the Queen would take his life. It was obvious that Felix was planning on killing Solar Mist. There was no way in hell he would let him go after almost getting killed by him. I see. Felix gave him a side glance and continued walking. Then wait for a bit. I have an unpaid debt with Solar Mist to finish. I apologize, but I can't allow you to touch Solar Mist either. Spirit Visage pointed his finger at Felix and said, if you manage to kill him inside my 3 domains, then all I have to say is well played. Felix neither understood what he meant nor his reason for protecting Solar Mist. He knew that none of them were really that close to protect each other like this. This made him believe that the unfamous protection contract was definitely signed between them. After all, even the kindest player in the individual games would not use his energy to protect a useless player. Solar Mist, who had absolutely no energy left, was beyond useless. His value in the alliance was already null. I had no idea how to kill you before due to your annoying ability. Felix started laughing out loud while creating 2 pitch-black bombs in his hands. But now, you just made it possible. Thank you and goodbye. He immediately threw them towards Solar Mist with uncanny accuracy. His training in the center always had an accuracy exercise. Poof! Poof! One bomb landed on Solar Mist's body while the other landed 2 meters near him. Felix smiled in satisfaction at the sight of Solar Mist's body turning black within an instant, then breaking into small particles resembling ash. 1 touch, 1 second, that's all it took to turn Solar Mist into a pile of black dust. His supernova might be a strong technique and more flamboyant than Felix's bombs. But, when it comes to results, Felix's bloodline never failed to deliver. Wasn't that a bit too easy? Felix's satisfaction didn't last for long, as his guts started tingling that everything was going too smoothly. Spirit Visage said that he laid 3 domains, but his bombs still took Solar Mist's life. Unless, Felix quickly sprinted towards the blast area, planning to check on Solar Mist up close. Yet, no matter how much he ran, the distance remained fixed. I told you, didn't I? Felix immediately jumped to the left after hearing a whisper near his ear. However, the whispering didn't stop. The moment I saw the black sphere surrounding you, I laid out my domains. The only reason I didn't act before was to see how was your condition. Felix activated his black aura around him, hoping to get rid of his annoying voice. Too bad, it just kept coming and coming. I see that you somehow got your energy back. Your ultimate ability truly makes one envious. Unfortunately, no matter if you got it back or not. The moment my 3 domains overlapped, you are pretty much doomed. Felix didn't sound his response, as his eyes were roaming around, trying to see if there was anything different. Unfortunately, he saw nothing out of the ordinary. The walls were still gleaming with a metallic L.U.S.Tur. The floor was as hard as always, and most importantly, the blue barrier in the sky that blocked the players from flying above the maze was still there. There was absolutely not a single hint that Felix was inside an illusion domain. Don't even mention 3 of them. Asna, what do you see? He stopped bothering relying on his eyes and asked Asna, who he knew was 100% unaffected by any illusion. A lot of things are happening. She played with her nails while retelling everything that happened and was happening. While you were running in circles like a moron, the creep already woke up the prick and told him to leave. She suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, the gorilla, and that random player has just arrived." Ha ha. The prick path was blocked by the gorilla. He is not letting him escape. I see. Am I in any danger? He asked, totally understanding who she was referring to each player. So far no, she shook her head and said, the creep is conversing with the gorilla. He is telling him that the alliance contract is still active and he can't touch a single finger of the prick. Hee hee, so they are thoroughly ignoring my existence, right? He smiled warmly, yet his eyebrows kept twitching. It was clear that he didn't like the treatment he was receiving. Did they think just because he didn't attack them for even once, he could be underestimated like this? He didn't know if Spirit Visage was that confident in his 3 illusions that he actually focused on other things instead of attacking him. But he knows one thing. Those F***ers were going to pay. All of them. For chasing him, almost getting him killed, and even ignoring him. He was going to show them the real Felix, who slew the Iron Titan, the Terror Serpent, and finally the Tripo Mother Spider. The real Felix whose name resounded 3 times in the maze's sky. His chapter is up.d by nvel, bin.co/m. If they thought that he was the same as before when he lacked energy, then they would pay with their lives. Asna, please help me approach them as fast as possible without making it obvious. He requested. Okay. The current distance between you and them is about 130 meters or such. Turn left and walk forward. Felix did exactly as she told him while rolling a few times on the floor and throwing bombs randomly. He kept doing so over and over again, uncaring about how others would perceive him. Obviously, he appeared like a retard in the eyes of the spectators and his enemies, but still, their mocking expressions were proof that his tactic was working like a charm. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience. Please click #4951955056733535369 for visiting. Do I keep walking, Asna? Felix suddenly paused as he saw that a wall was blocking his path. Yep, ignore everything you see and carry on walking. She urged him, increase your speed. It seems that the creep finished dealing with the gorilla. All right. Felix nodded his head and suddenly jumped forward with his eyes wide open, blindly trusting Asna's words that the wall before him was fake. Whoosh! The sound of the wind resounded in Felix's ears, as his body dove right through the wall unhindered. He immediately understood that the illusion was messing up with all of his perceptions, letting him see, hear, and even smell things that didn't exist or did exist but was hidden behind the illusion domains. Spirit Visage wasn't bullshitting him. He was truly under an upgraded illusion domain way stronger than the one used on him before. Unfortunately for Spirit Visage, it didn't matter what he used. In front of Asna's all-seeing eyes, his illusions appeared even worse than party tricks. Hey guys! Doesn't seem like Landlord is approaching us? A bit creeped out, bloodish eyes pointed at Felix, who was rolling 5 steps forward then walking 2 steps back while throwing 1 bomb randomly. Bloodish Eyes was quite scared to interrupt their argument, but for a while now, he was watching Felix advance towards them bit by bit. At the start, it wasn't obvious since Felix was far away from them, but as he got closer and closer, he started to realize that before long, Felix would truly be up to their noses. He was absolutely terrified of the mere idea of getting close to that monster. He was more scared of him than his allies. Exhausted and distraught, Solar Mist opened up his hazy eyes slowly and tried to focus on the approaching Felix. However, his eyes were only feeding him blurry images. He was exhausted to the point he was leaning on the wall as a support to fall over. Forget about seeing, he was having difficulty keeping his eyes open. No matter how many times he tried to see Felix, he failed. He was told by Spirit Visage that Felix survived his strongest technique and even recovered to his peak form again. He didn't dare to believe him until now, he still was on the fence. He wanted to see with his own eyes if he was lied to or not. However, his exhaustion robbed him of such a basic wish. Felix didn't want to use the remaining 5% energy no matter what, just to fall into this vulnerable state as he was. Falling in it was the same as a death sentence in the individual games. Tired from trying, Solar Mist closed his eyes again after continuing to see the same blurriness. He decided to focus on listening to the chatter of Spirit Visage and Pure Muscle. What's going on here? Didn't you tell us that your domain's overlap technique was impossible to break? After paying close attention, Pure Muscle also noticed the abnormal way Felix kept moving. He activated his dermal armor, preparing for a fight. He didn't even wait for Spirit Visage's response before doing so. No one can escape my technique. Unless they were an illusion element users. Spirit Visage gave a side glance to Pure Muscle and assured him, I am certain that Mr. Landlord isn't one. So what's your explanation on his movement? Pure Muscle asked in utter contempt. He knew that Spirit Visage wasn't going to answer him since it was clear that he was biased toward his own technique. Even if Felix walked towards them, he would still question what he was seeing before believing it. This was what blind confidence seemed like. Pure Muscle certainly wasn't going to entertain his overconfidence in his technique. Not again. He trusted in his words before they met Felix. He told them that he would lay an illusion domain first that would block Felix from seeing them. However, that turned out to be complete bullshit. Felix stared right through their eyes and even named them each. Wasn't that enough proof that either Felix had ways to counter Spirit Visage's illusions or in a more heartless manner, they weren't even affecting him in the first place? Pure Muscle was able to see this as clear as daylight. Not just him but probably even the spectators knew so as well. The only one who wasn't seeing this, or probably didn't want to, was Spirit Visage himself. Who could blame him though? If he dared entertain the idea for even a second, it would mean that his abilities were totally useless against Felix. In other words, his entire presence was useless. At this moment when his life was tied to protecting Solar Mist, that was the last thing he wanted to think about. So, he looked at Felix, who was about to reach the 50 meters marks, and called out loud, Illusion Prison. He was going to show them all that his illusion domain wasn't broken now nor ever. Abruptly, the invisible domain that was surrounding Felix began to shrink and shrink continuously until it was left with barely 10 meters radius from the previous 30 meters. Then, out of nowhere, invisible colorless swords, spears, arrows, and all kinds of weapons were created on the walls of the domain. Those weapons were pointing with their sharp tips at Felix, who never stopped rolling around akin to a monkey. Pure Muscle and Bloodish Eyes were not able to see this attack. However, the same couldn't be said for the spectators, as Zoe made sure to spotlight this invisible technique, making it appear in plain sight for everyone. Strike! In difference, Spirit Visage brought down his hand from above akin to a general commanding his soldiers to fire. Whoosh, phew, cluck. The sound of weapons splitting the air itself and clashing against each other echoed in everyone's ears, except the target himself, Felix. He kept on rolling forward unbeknownst to him that an array of invisible weapons approaching him rapidly. Just as Spirit Visage was going to give his trademark mild smile to Pure Muscle for doubting his words, he saw a bewildering sight. A sight that shook his core and made him question his eyes. It wasn't just him but all the spectators who saw it felt their blood boil in fervor and excitement. Felix swerving and evading those weapons right and left with a blazing speed and reflexes inside his pitch-black aura that he activated the moment those weapons were launched. Even when he wasn't able to dodge a weapon entirely, he made sure that his non-vital parts were the ones being hit. Bloodied wounds and scratches started to build upon his body, yet he didn't slow down for even a split second. He merely kept focusing on dodging while simultaneously advancing forward step by step, trying to exit the domain. Almost there. Keep moving. The spectators kept hallowing their cheers at the sight of him treading under the never-ending salvo of weapons. The confident smile that was always on his face made them feel like he could do anything. If only they knew that Felix was currently having his eyes closed shut while listening to Asna's voice guiding him through the salvo, their chairs would have made the stadium collapse on itself. That's right. Felix was dodging purely by relying on his reflexes that he honed in his previous life and on Asna's calm voice. He knew that she wouldn't mess up and make him get struck in the face by an arrow or a spear. But it was totally on him to respond immediately to her warnings and directions. Of course, if those weapons weren't being released periodically instead of all at once, he wouldn't have been able to dodge them in the slightest even with her warnings. Plus, his revitalization passive was healing his wounds automatically within an instant by absorbing the corruption aura. If it wasn't for it, he would have fallen by now. Impossible, just impossible. Spirit Visage finally started to show a hint of emotions in his eyes. His belief that his illusion domain was unbreakable was shattered the instant Felix started dodging. He knew that only himself was able to see his ultimate ability, Illusion Prison, taking effect. It was the one and only offensive ability he had in his pocket, and it never failed to deliver before. Every time he activated it on his previous targets, they ended up in a bloody mess. Yet now, it was countered by mere eyesight and reflexes. One could only wonder what his reaction would be if he knew that Felix wasn't relying at all on his eyesight at all. I guess it's my turn. Although Pure Muscle neither was able to see the active illusion prison nor Felix due to his active black aura, he knew that the situation wasn't pretty from Spirit Visage's frozen expression. In his eyes, for that creep whose expression always remained indifferent to appear as such, it only meant that it was on him to carry this battle forward. Exploding boulder! He shouted while spreading his arms to the limit. Out of nowhere, the empty area between his arms started to show pieces of gray particles gathering in a swirling manner. The amount and the size of the pieces kept increasing larger and larger, building a rough spherical rock. It was small at the start, having the same size as a soccer ball. However, the pieces of rocks kept attaching continuously to it until Pure Muscle's spread hands were able to grip it from both sides. Bam! He lifted it and put it on his shoulder. The sound of his dermal armor colliding with it sent cold shivers in Bloodish's back. The sheer power needed to carry such a behemoth boulder was beyond him. He quickly moved to the side, giving Pure Muscle the space needed to make his move. Pure Muscle took deep a breath while his fingers were dug deeply into the boulder, akin to having his fingers inside a bowling ball. Dodge this! He sprinted forward to build momentum and yelled as he hurled the boulder in the air, Die! Find up Tedovels on n/v/elben.co/m. Whoosh! The boulder flew swiftly in direction of Felix, who just exited the illusion domain with the same confident smile on his lips. Immediately after seeing his assailants watching with held breaths, he put his hands in his pockets. What's up? He asked in a C.O.C.KY manner. Bloodish eyes flinched at the way he was looking at him and subconsciously lifted his chin watching the boulder falling like a meteor. What is he looking at? Confused, Felix lifted his head as well. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click #2in1_49519569357817441 for visiting. Dear God! Scared shitless by the sight of the boulder that was about to smash his C.O.C.KY attitude away, Felix jumped to his left in an awkward manner, narrowly getting out of the strike zone. Bam! The boulder exploded immediately on contact with the floor, hurling the pieces it was made from everywhere. Ouch, ouch, ouch! Pained, Felix kept groaning each time a large piece struck his body. Although he was coiled around himself, protecting his head and other weaker areas, still the rocks hurt like hell. He expected that he would be welcomed with a shower of disbelieving looks after surviving that death trap, yet it turned out the only shower he received was rugged rocks of all sizes hitting him mercilessly. Thankfully, the bashing didn't last for even a second before it stopped. Felix peeked with eyes first and saw that he was safe for now. He snapped his finger with difficulty and the same black aura surrounded him, helping him heal up those blue and purple bruises in his flesh. UF***'s are dead. Felix was truly royally pissed now. He never had a single break since the moment he was chased by them. He was getting tired and sick of their attempts at bringing him down. They kept attacking him to their heart content, now it was his turn to return the favor. With a livid expression, he created 2 pitch-black bombs in his hands. Then, he hurled one in Bloodish Eye's direction and the other towards Solar Mist, who started to squirm in his place the instant he heard Felix's damned voice. Whoosh! Whoosh! He tried to open his eyes at the sound of the bomb approaching him, but his eyelids felt as heavy as a mountain. Spirit Visage, save me! Terrified, he yelled in his mind. The Queen made his begging heard loud and clean in Spirit Visage's mind. However, Spirit Visage still didn't move from his place. He knew that his abilities were useless against Felix's bombs. Especially his ethereal form. He couldn't even use his body as a shield to protect Solar Mist. Well played, landlord, he said while closing his eyes, preparing for his approaching death. Just like he told Felix before, if he managed to attack Solar Mist within his illusion domain, then he could only say that. Felix went beyond his requirement and survived everything thrown at him. He was proud enough to accept his defeat like a man. As for Bloodish Eyes? The moment he saw the bomb approaching him, his feet stiffened, not allowing him to move a single inch. He just kept staring at the pitch-black bomb getting larger and larger in his plain sight. He only had one thought: I should have never raised my arm. This left only Pure Muscle with the ability to save Solar Mist. But who are we kidding? Pure Muscle's delightful grin was about to reach his ears at the sight of the prick finally getting what he deserved. Poof! Poof! Everyone ignored Bloodish Eyes, who got smacked in the chest by the bomb, and focused on the bomb that exploded on top of Solar Mist's head, covering his entire body in the pitch-black mist. No! Save me, love! He didn't manage to scream for a split second before the mist penetrated every particle in his body, affecting him with 20 inducements all combined at once. What he felt during that split second was beyond anything he experienced in his entire life. He literally died in an instant without the ability to even breathe his last words. If his body wasn't totally hidden inside the black mist, Pure Muscle wouldn't have been grinning foolishly but escape as far as possible. Meanwhile, the spectators, who were able to see everything as clear as crystal, felt chills coursing through their back at this sight. Solar Mist's body breaking into tiny black particles. Some drifted in the air unnoticed by Pure Muscle while the majority piled up, creating a small pile of black ash. The pitch-black mist slowly faded away, exposing 2 piles of ash to Pure Muscle. Bloodish Eyes ended up with the same fate. As for Spirit Visage, he faded away silently the moment Solar Mist died. He neither screamed nor spoke. He just faded with closed eyes and his trademark faint smile. No one wept for him nor noticed him, as everyone's attention was entrapped by the effect of the corruption inducement. When the effective ability was more interesting than the death of a hardcore player, this should speak volumes on the worth of the player's lives in the eyes of the spectators. Though, Spirit Visage wasn't as liked as Felix due to using the slave contract. They never forgot. The moment Pure Muscle saw that pile of ash, his delighted grin stiffened on his face. His heartbeat started to rise gradually. He knew that his situation just took a sharp turn from what he envisioned. He assumed before that Felix's poison abilities had the least effect on him due to his dermal armor. The only inducement that was bothering him was corrosion inducement, but with his dermal armor, he had nothing to worry about. His body would be totally protected from the corrosion. As for other inducements, he planned on holding his breath. He was confident in his lung capacity to sustain him for even 10 minutes. This meant his survival was always guaranteed against Felix. Either win the fight or prolong it enough until the game ends. But now, at the sight of what remained of solar mist, he wasn't so sure anymore. "You like playing with big balls, huh?" A sudden sarcastic voice, coming behind his back, broke him out of his daze. He immediately held his breath while trying to roll away from the owner of that damned voice. However, his vision was completely blacked out, not allowing him to even see his armor. He knew what happened and he felt his heart sink at the thought of being inside that sinister inducement. Why is it not taking effect on you?" Felix asked while scratching his chin in wonder as he kept observing Pure Muscle's gray armor get only slightly affected by corrosion. I was worrying for nothing, I guess." Pure Muscle mused as he heard his question. He wasn't a retard to open his mouth and answer him. "Time to leave. This bastard is the toughest nut I have ever met." Pure Muscle quickly turned around, deciding to give up on continuing the fight. At this point, killing Felix or not wasn't even worth it in his eyes. Though he was quite hurt about losing his points to him, he knew that it was merely a bet. Sometimes you win and most of the time you lose. Unfortunately for him, Felix didn't share the same thought process as him. Quit? If Felix didn't kill anything the breaths before the game end, he wouldn't be deserving of having such a free potent energy. How about now? Brittle inducement. Felix said while snapping his finger, creating a gray bomb and exploding it on Pure Muscle's chest. A bit worried by hearing the sound, Pure Muscle kept looking around him, trying to notice any difference. However, the area was still pitch black. Was he trying to scare him? What the hell is going on? Crack! Crack! Agitated, Pure Muscle felt the armor that kept him protected and safe throughout all the games he had it on, started to break apart. Before he could comprehend what was happening, the armor began crumbling into small pieces, then falling into the floor. His hairy chest was the first to be exposed inside the black mist, following by his other body parts. Nananonu, N.O. A single particle of the black mist touching his chest was all it needed for the paralyzing inducement, motion sickness, senses disorientation, and the rest to do their wonders. Pure Muscle stood motionless without having a clear thought process. He felt woozy, lightheaded, and nauseous. Yet, that was the least of his concerns as he started to lose feelings of his body parts due to numbness and tinglings. 20 inducements kept assaulting him all together, making him experience everything at once. Felix didn't know why his corruption inducement was taking longer than usual, but if Pure Muscle could speak, he would have cursed his two passives, intermediate hardened skin and muscle armor, for delaying his doom. Unfortunately, he didn't have even a single clear thought coursing through his mind. If his mind wasn't affected, he would have at least tried to activate his other ability. Too bad, Felix mixed 3 mind-affecting inducements in his corruption poison just to block others from using their abilities. He created this inducement to be a sure kill ability. The moment it touched someone or took a whiff, his life would be in the Grip Reaper's bony hands. No one could escape it, no one. Felix approached the blackened standing corpse of Pure Muscle, who still had an agitated expression affixed on his face. Then, he snapped his finger, withdrawing the black mist, and exhaled a long breath through his mouth. Whoosh! Pure Muscle's blackened body immediately collapsed on itself, pilling up just like the rest. Calm and collected again, Felix looked around him and noticed that only 3 black small mounds were left in the area. He lifted his head and saw the blue barrier in the sky. Spirit Visage was nowhere to be seen. It's finally over. Relieved, Felix let out a long sigh while closing his eyes for a while. So many things happened in such a short amount of time that made him feel like he played 3 games in a row. But it was finally over. He still had some unanswered questions, like how did they find him in the first place, or who were the 4 players he spotted with his infrared vision at the time of the ambush. However, he soon stopped caring about them and just relaxed his tense shoulders. The game had only 3 minutes left in its lifespan, and he didn't want to spend it overthinking unnecessary problems. Plus, he already had plenty of unanswered questions concerning Asna's reason for not telling him about her hidden energy stash. But he would grill her after the game. Right now, he just walked to the wall and leaned against it, waiting for the final buzzer. If only he knew that above the wall he was leaning against, Master Mania was looking at him inside the shadow with eyes filled with raw emotions. He was scared, anxious, but hatred was still apparent in his eyes. He watched everything that happened since the moment Solar Mist's party started the ambush. Every time Felix was in a dire situation, the same weird laugh escaped through his rotten lips. Sadly, his laugh never lasted for even a few seconds, as Felix got out alive from every certain death situation. It got to the point that he started to believe that even his bounty hunt plan wasn't going to work against the C.O.C. Croach. Especially after he saw that pitch-black aura that appeared more like a fat Grim Reaper without a scythe. He doubted that anyone who saw that ability would actually dare approach Felix for a mere couple 100 million SC. Players weren't stupid. If the bounty's danger exceeded their expectations, they could only give up on it and focus on the game. Only desperate or ignorant fools would still attempt it. Why am I even thinking about killing him with a bounty? He narrowed his eyes at Felix, who seemed like he had his guard down, and thought, 1 shadow spikes and he will die. Just 1. He pointed his finger at Felix and then, nothing. He just froze after remembering what happened to him against Felix. He bypassed those hurtful memories of their fight and focused on the time he was spotted while still hidden in his shadow. Nervous, he withdrew his shaking finger and removed any thought he had about ambushing Felix. He recognized that Felix had knowledge about his position. The F***er is waiting for me to strike. He thought to himself. He realized that inside his shadow, he was completely safe from Felix's poisons. However, if he wanted to use his shadow spikes, he needed to exit the wall's shadow first. It was a trap. A deadly trap. In his mind, Felix didn't choose the wall randomly, but picked specifically to be close to him. This scene resembled exactly what happened during their first fight. Felix feigning weakness and ignorance to make him lower his guard and expose himself. He was waiting patiently for him to make a move. Master Mania felt like he was about to make the same mistake. Not this time, you crafty F***er, he cursed Felix and withdrew himself deeper into the shadows, not daring to remain above him anymore. However, a slight proud smirk suddenly emerged on his face. He honestly believed that he outwitted Felix. Too bad, he just outwitted himself, no one else. Felix truly had absolutely no idea that Master Mania was above him. His mental energy didn't recover with his elemental energy. They were 2 separate energies. Thus, his infrared vision was totally offline. If his revitalization passive needed mental energy to activate, he would have honestly died after that attack. Thankfully, it was always in active mode, just like his super strength. Though, it belonged to a completely different type. Felix just needed to give the order for his poison to be absorbed, and it would start doing its magic. It all depended on the potency of the poison. In other words, this passive was indirectly linked to his elemental energy. The more he had, the better this passive would perform. After seeing that Master Mania left, Felix's fans sighed in relief. Then, their deafening chants uplifted the silent stadium from its graveyard. Landlord! 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 When Felix was fighting using his corruption inducement, everyone was just watching silently how one ability changed the course of the battle. Whether they were commoners or VIP viewers. No one had a single idea of what was that damned inducement and why was he saving it even when he almost died. Most importantly, how did he get his energy back? So many questions were eating them up, making them confused, uncomfortable, and especially curious. Yet, based on Felix's personality, they knew that he would probably escape the moment he obtained the victory. Landlord brought too many surprises in this game to just shrug them off. Zoe spoke with a crafty glint. If he dares to ditch the ceremonial trophy award or not give us a proper interview to clear our doubts about his ultimate ability, black inducement, and specifically his sudden energy upsurge. She brought the mic near her lips and yelled with her eyes closed shut, "We will boycott Hyam. Boycott! Boycott! Boycott!" Suddenly everyone was screaming to boycott Felix at the top of their lungs. His fans' chants got easily drowned by the spectators' combined voices. Yet that wasn't even it, as even in the stream chat room, viewers were spamming boycott as well. Heck, even a couple of VIP viewers joined the excitement. Stupefied, leader Emma and her followers just kept watching their club chants get overwhelmed without a single ounce of resistance. She had no idea how things quickly derailed to this point. She was expecting the stadium to follow their cheers and chant with them as well. After all, Felix literally gave them a spectacular game that was hard to find another one as good as it for the next month. Yet, the bastards only thought of grilling him after he left the maze. She understood their curiosity as she also wanted to know everything about Felix. But still, it was too much to call for a boycott if he didn't please them. "You ungrateful bastards!" She yelled with flushed cheeks, scaring the shit of those around her. In an area near the golden chest that Felix opened, next to a wall, 2 players were staring at a corpse lying on the ground. One of them had a hound's head stuck in his stomach, and the other was a tall macho man. Disappointed, Hound Stench shook his head at the sight of Spirit Visage's corpse disintegrating into light particles, marking 30 seconds after his death. In the SG, corpses remain 30 seconds max before getting removed from the game. When Spirit Visage failed to fulfill the contract, his consciousness was destroyed by the Queen, killing him for real. However, his corpse remained unmoving throughout the process. It was neat and painless. Yet, the Queen's neatness brought an issue for Hound Stench. He thought that Spirit Visage used an ability in his ethereal form that made his shallow breath stop for a while. But after seeing with his own eyes that his body disintegrated, he knew that their hunt must have ended unsuccessfully. Find authorized novels in, faster updates, better experience, please click #2in1_49581364810406985 for visiting. He didn't know what happened there or who died or lived. Regardless, the fact that Spirit Visage actually died made him pretty certain that the fate of others was as doomed as him. It was only common sense. Spirit Visage had the greatest survivability in the game due to his untouchable ethereal form, especially if his real body was protected like in this case. Yet, he still died. Top VL updates on n/o/v/lb/in.com. This made Hound Stench wonder how did it happen, and if Felix was the one who killed him, how exactly did he achieve so? If his elemental energy wasn't almost dead due to overusing it to track Felix for such a long distance, he would have gone with them instead of staying here doing nothing. If only he knew that his exhausted energy was what saved him, those thoughts wouldn't even cross his mind anymore. Soon, he stopped caring about the fate of his allies and started closing his coat back on under Coco's wines. Good game, sir. Much on, and congratulations on getting the 100 mil. After putting Coco away, Hound Stench offered a handshake to Much On with a polite smile. You too, Sir Hound, and thank you. Much On nodded his head respectfully while shaking his hand. His respectful manner made Hound Stench a bit curious. Don't you hate us for making you sign a slave contract? He asked him. Hate you? Muchon scratched his head in confusion and asked, why should I? He gave him a sincere smile and clarified, I was supposed to die when you caught me. That was simply how things are in this vicious platform. I had no reason to complain. However, instead of killing me, you gave me a choice. That choice, I will pick every time someone gives it to me. He shrugged his shoulder, I would rather bet on luck that I will live after signing the contract than accepting death straight away. Am I not standing here alive and kicking the best proof that I made the right choice? He laughed in pure delight, making Hound Stench smile bitterly. You were indeed lucky. All of you were. Hound Stench murmured under his breath while gazing at the sky of the maze. Memories of the time Solar Mist proposed using the slave contract resurfaced in his mind. After seeing them again, he felt relieved that their plan never reached the third stage. He was guilt-ridden the entire time that if they managed to kill Felix successfully, he would have done something he realized late that he shouldn't have. Zoe, the spectators, and even some VIP viewers all thought that the reason they caught players and forced them to sign the contract slave was to ambush Felix if he came and also protect the exit. However, the real reason was to gather as many players as possible in one spot and herd them akin to sheep, waiting for the day of their slaughter. That's right. The real existence for those 22 players was to simply get harvested for GPs after they kill Felix. 22 players meant 4,400 GP. They knew that Princess Bird was ranked as second, and they didn't have the guts to kill her after removing Felix from the first rank. However, they were certain that she wasn't ahead of them like Felix was. They could catch up to her if they somehow obtained 1,000 GP to 1,500 GP. Hence, Solar Mist immediately proposed the idea of catching players who reached the exit by themselves and leave them as backup points. Of course, his proposal wasn't said in public but in private by using the Queen's voice. At that time, Pure Muscle snapped on him not because he didn't want the idea of signing slave contracts with those players, but due to his party wanting to massacre them for points later on. His pride and dignity didn't let him accept such a heinous crime. He had no problems fighting or killing, but suggesting to give players a false hope of survival when they really were just a bunch of walking dead, he just couldn't. No matter what they said or promised him, he was uncompromising in his decision. Sadly, it didn't really matter as they were 3 and he was 1. Their alliance was all based on votes. Thus, their hidden plan was decided on. Hound Stench was hesitating to vote yes at first, but after remembering the massive GP amount he needed to buy an expensive potion in the prize pool, he could only bury those guilty feelings deep within and vote yes. Unfortunately or fortunately for him, Felix didn't come to the gate as they expected but remained far off, forcing them to change plans and hunt him down instead. What they didn't expect as well was for the bastard to be at the very edge of the northeast side of the maze, putting them in a long path. The journey itself took an entire half an hour of constant running to barely make it. Their plan of massacring the players went down the drain the moment they noticed that time wasn't going to be enough to make another journey back, even if they killed Felix within an instant. Pure Muscle gloated at them, making Solar Mist furious and Spirit Visage a bit upset. However, Hound Stench only felt a burst of relief. He knew at that moment he wasn't a cold-blooded killer in his core even if his dire circumstances forced him to be one. Sorry, my love. Dad really tried his best. A sudden tear dropped down his cheek as he gazed at the blue barrier getting darkened. He wanted to win the bet so badly, not for him, but for his daughter, who was born with a fragile consciousness barrier that could collapse by a single gentle breeze. Anyone with her condition could not awaken and integrate. In other words, her maximum lifespan was bound to 500 years. No one wanted to bury their children, all parents wanted it to be the other way around. He, just like the majority of the players, had their own reasons for joining the platform. Some do it for entertainment, training, richness, wishes, and some do it for others. All it mattered was the SUPREMACY Games platform gave everyone an equal chance to fulfill their desires and hopes. Sadly, this game wasn't meant for Hound Stench. Because Felix was on it. He wiped the tear away unnoticed by Muchon and the spectators, who were still shouting boycott. His sorrowful gaze was replaced instantly to indifference and determined again. But don't worry, your dad will never stop trying. Not now, not ever. He thought one last time as his body started to disintegrate into light particles, indicating his teleportation. Behind him, Muchon's body was also experiencing the same process. Good luck out there, Mr. Hound. Muchon waved his hand with a sincere smile. You too. Hound Stench nodded his head mildly before he drifted in the air, just like the remaining players in the maze. Light particles were going upward from every spot in the maze. But still, the biggest CLU.S.Ter was the one in the middle of the maze. Throughout the entire hour, the players were near the maze exit, none of them managed to touch the cold metallic L.U.S.Ter of the gate. It was near, yet far at the same time. However, feelings of regret, envy, or greed didn't cross their minds. They just felt relieved that the game was finally over. And they remained alive until they heard the last buzzer. Peep! Well, that's all for this part, truckers. See you all in the next part.